Welcome, everybody, whatever time zone or time stream you're joining us from this afternoon here in, my time zone. The only problem with having the best, most upbeat theme tune in the whole of Doctor Who podcasts, yes, officially, I'm claiming that for this show. The only problem with having that is that you've got to be really, really upbeat coming off the back of it, haven't you? Because, the last thing you want to do is let it all drop. Good to see you all. Good to have you here. I'm Dan Hadley, Birmingham's King of the Geeks, and this is the return of Type 40 Live, another couple of hours worth of Doctor Who talk here on the Spacebook, the best channel that you'd never heard of. Where am I? Here I am. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Hey, here we are again. More Doctor Who talk in the height of British summertime. You'd never know it out there. But fortunately, we're still basking in the glow of that wonderful news of the departure of Chris Chibnall and Jodie Whittaker. Yes, indeed. Happy days. There's still plenty of those ahead. Yes, it's great to see you all here too. Who have we got in the chat this time? Hail to everyone, says Kelly. Hi, Kelly. Good to see you here too. And Richard Brooks. Good afternoon, folks. Good afternoon, Richard. Good to see you back. Hi, everyone from Lord Thoth, as always. On the clock, my friend. And Vanessa. Vanessa's here too. Hi, Vanessa. Good to see you. Mega Neurobyte says, hello again. I'm back. So am I. And Lord Thoth reminds you to like the video. Yes, you can like this one in advance. It's going to be a good one. I can promise you. I've been forward into the future and checked it out. It's safe to like it now. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel. We can't say this enough, can we? Yes, please subscribe to the channel. We know there are people out there who watch and don't subscribe. But hit that little bell. Hit that little bell to get the notifications. And then you'll know exactly when we're going live next. We've got chats filling up. Absolutely fantastic to see everybody back. And lots of returning names and new people too. Sun Raider Customs. This is becoming my fave show to listen to. You can listen and watch. We have some pretty pictures coming up and lots of sights and sounds for you all for the next couple of hours. It's Jamie Pring says greetings. Greetings to you too, Jamie. And ahoy, we've got an ahoy. I think that's our first ahoy from Digby Strawbridge. Absolutely fantastic. So keep those comments coming. As always, we're streaming live to YouTube, the world's largest streaming platform, and over to Facebook, to the Type 40 Facebook group and the Type 40 Facebook page. So if you're watching us over there, please let StreamYard know who you are. Then we'll be able to see your comments too. Absolutely fantastic stuff. I hope everybody is keeping well, asks Alan Collins. Well, I'm keeping really, really well. Let's check in and see how some of they are. So Ian David Diaz, how are you keeping?
I'm fine. Sorry, I was just answering a lot of people, just saying hi to everybody. But
you're talking to your public again.
Yes, of course. I'm so well liked. No.
Yes, Ian's just been eating a cornetto, everybody, making the rest of us very, very jealous.
Yeah, I have. Even though it's raining and it's not very warm, you got to have a cornetto from time to time, haven't you? Definitely.
I think you have. And you know what? If we can will the summertime back into existence, who knows? It may come. Build it and they will come, just like Field of Dreams. Yep. You like that movie too?
Yep. Love that movie. Love it.
Let's see if it's any brighter up where he is, up in the Doctor Who loft. Right, JT.
Oh. I am delighted to report, Spacebookers, it's bloody gorgeous up here in Scotland today. I am sweltering again. And that's one of the differences between being down in England and being up in Scotland. We've rearranged and swapped the weather. So hello, Spacebookers, welcome. And nice to see everybody. Welcome to the show that brings you the news before it happens.
We've done this consistently all year, haven't we?
Well, even before that, if you can go back to last summer, really, where we were hearing various things and bringing it. I'm dead pleased about that. But good afternoon, Spacebookers. Nice to see everybody.
And due to popular demand, we've just published a video. That reminds me, just a little quarter of an hour video.
You'd think this was planned, wouldn't you?
All of us talking about a very contentious subject, a subject that often gets trotted out across social media, in particular where we talk about Doctor Who as it is currently. We answer the question of the China deal and the HBO deal that had supposedly set the future for Doctor Who. We didn't want to go over it all again on this show, even though people were asking us.
We did it last time.
We've put it out as a specific video, 15 minutes it is, up on the channel, and it's named Doctor Who Deal or No Deal. You can find out the truth there about is there a deal, with who and for what, and you get our views as fans and as people who've worked in this industry over the last 10, 20 years, a great many of us. And just the fact that we've got eyes and ears and we bother doing our research. I know it's a little bit out of fashion actually doing your research, but we're bringing it back. We're bringing it back.
Absolutely.
And we're bringing back the sunshine, because the sun is always shining where Simon Horton is, I think, isn't it?
It's always shining here, absolutely.
Hi, Daniel.
Hello, fellow lunatics out there. Everybody well and fighting fit and ready to go.
Can I just say I love Simon's outfit this afternoon. It reminds me of the Duran Duran time, Si. You're looking absolutely spiffling there.
Yeah.
The mission has been achieved. I love it. Fabulous.
Duran, you know that. I'm an 80s chick.
I know it. And they're going on tour
right
here.
In 1983. I'm still there in 1983. I've never
look
left.
amazing, perched on the front of a yacht right now. I think.
Yes.
The Rio video. Yeah,
I'm channeling my Nick Rhodes this afternoon. I'm channeling Nick Rhodes.
Absolutely.
What are we talking about? What are these old boys talking about, Charlotte?
I know
Any
what
idea?
Duran Duran is, though. I do know what that group is, so I'm not completely.
Well, they're still going, aren't they, Charlotte? They're going on tour. They're still fairly big, and I bet Simon's got his ticket there. I bet he's going to go.
Yeah.
Charlotte knows Duran Duran, but she doesn't know the word merchandise. That's a real shame, isn't it?
No. I now say to myself, merchandise. I try
There
and
you
say
go.
now on streams because of a certain something.
My favourite comment on this so far comes from Derek Brady. Hi, Derek. Good to see you back again. He's dropped this one.
Hey!
Simon LaHorton.
Well
That's
done,
quite good.
Derek.
We'll keep that.
Yeah, we'll have that.
Father Christopher.
And we've got a
Father
hail here
Christopher.
from Father Christopher Miller, back from Vegas. Good to see you, Father Christopher. Glad you got home safely. And Vanessa Law says
Busted
Simon
Tylenol.
is looking sharp. Yeah,
He is. He is. He's the only one that can wear a jacket out of all of us. We can't wear jackets. We just look stupid.
Not in
But
this
he
heat.
looks great,
Oh, I'm
yeah.
sorry, you haven't got the heat. I forgot.
Come on, Crimpline.
Oh God, yes. We've got. He's doing the full lyrics here. We've got a bit of Duran
Brilliant.
Duran lyric recital going on in the live chat too. Everybody's hearing the music. People often hear music when we walk into a room.
Well, let's face it, 80s music right now is back with a bang, apart from Kev McCulloch's. And it's really, really popular, and it's huge, apart from Kev McCulloch's.
It's huge. Talking about 80s kind of retro synthy music this week. I mean, we've talked about this the last 2 weeks, haven't we? How that the entire fandom is basking in the glow of the imminent departure of not just Jodie Whittaker, who apparently they insist has been playing the Doctor, but Chris Chibnall, the world's worst showrunner. So people have been stimulated by what may come next. And the Radio Times ran that poll, didn't they? Which various people reported in a very, very bizarre way. Which there was one or two very, very clear winners, and one guy in particular came out right on top. And yeah, we're now a week on, and this is actually escalating with the wide usage of the hashtag. What is it? Hashtag Sheen for
14.
It's everywhere. It's all over Twitter, and it's all over YouTube now. So I wanted to play this in case you guys in the chat hadn't seen this yet, because this is the work of a friend of ours. This is Lee over at Ordred Audio Visual. He's composed all the music for Type 40.
We
Our
love
fabulous theme tune, which as we've already established that our theme tune, Type 40's theme tune, is the very best in podcasting.
Absolutely.
And if you think
Absolutely.
otherwise, you're wrong. It's that simple.
No question.
So he's gone and looked at the Doctor Who theme itself, and even he hasn't just done the music, everybody. He's set it to some wonderful visuals too. So we're going to get this up on screen now, because I know that a couple of the panel haven't seen it yet. And we're going down the time tunnel here now. This is Sheen. Hashtag Sheen for 14. Let it sweep you away, and just imagine, everybody. Yes, there's something very primal about all of that, everybody, I think. So, yeah, what do you think? Are you sold on Michael Sheen as the Doctor even more after seeing that, Ian?
No, I prefer him without the beard, actually. He just looks like a homeless person, doesn't he? Let's face it. He needs to get rid of that beard. But yeah, no, I wouldn't mind if he became the Doctor. He's a really good actor, you know, so I wouldn't mind at all.
And those titles, they're very sort of 80s, aren't they, everybody? It sort of chimes. It's the electronic era sort of giving a bit of oomph, JT.
Yeah, and when I hear that, the Peter Howell theme tune, it brings back such memories, you know, of coming of age, as it were, coming into the 80s, that whole renaissance that was coming on in the 80s, you know, going through my teens and just sitting down on a weeknight watching Peter Davison's Doctor Who. There's something, I mean, it's very difficult to describe. If you weren't there, you don't understand it really, because it was special. It was something totally different. So to hear that version mixed in with that, that's nice. It's lovely.
I always had a problem with that beginning scene with Peter Davison because his eyes was like this, wasn't it? When his face appeared, it was like
probably because he was shoved in. It's probably because he was shoved into his photo shoot before he realised what was going on. Really, okay. You know. And there's a lot of them where he's actually smiling because they're trying to get him to laugh and everything like this. But he must have been like, "What have I just done? What am I doing? Where am I?"
The music and the visuals have gone down very well in the chat. Everybody, we've got lots of comments like "This is brilliant" from Crimpling Doubloon. We've got beautiful. We have bleeding awesome. Send shivers, says Derek Brady there, and Crimpling Doubloon. As I want to watch this series now.
I'd love to know what Michael Sheen thinks about this. This must have got to his agent. This must have got to his attention. I'd love to see what he's actually thinking. He must be so impressed by it. You know, pandering to an actor's ego like this, he must be really chuffed.
Actors
was he nominated for an Oscar at one point? Was he nominated for Oscar? I'm not sure.
I don't know, probably.
For Nixon,
not, he should have
And
been.
also,
Nixon.
I forgot about that.
But here's the thing: like we know he's pally with Tennant, so they must be having a right giggle. I think right now the two.
I think David Tennant's pally with everybody. he's a social whirl in that world, isn't he?
I tell you, Simon must be holding that up for like 15 minutes.
I know. Let's keep going with it. Let's keep going with it. We were all ignoring it, Simon.
It's better to look at me, let's be honest.
So there's lots and lots of people there echoing still after 2-3 weeks now. Hashtag Sheen for 14. Darren Powers says it all here. And we've got, Kelly in the chat says, she's a voice of dissent. I also admit that David Morrissey would be a good choice, but his name doesn't rhyme with any numbers.
Morrissey, Corrissey, 13. No.
I think I'm the only one. I said this last week. I'm the only one that isn't excited by Michael Sheen. I'm sorry. I just don't rate him particularly. Sorry.
That's
fine.
It's fine.
I feel the same.
Sorry, go ahead.
But I was just going to say, I think the hashtag though, because it's not
just
it
rhymes.
About him, though. But yes, it does.
It's what he represents, isn't it, Charlotte? It's what he represents.
It's sort of the fandom saying right now we've had 4 years, 5 by the time they go, of blatantly pandering to politics, to blatantly pandering to a certain type of fan, and it's just a lot of people who are using the hashtag are saying, this is just to show that the show worked for 50 plus years being a male. This show traditionally is a male role, and we want to go back to that. So I think it's a lot of that as well.
It's true. I mean, do you remember the time when Charlotte actually came on and she hardly said anything? Well, now you can't even shut her up now, can you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what we like, confidence. The other thing about it is with Michael Sheen is that they've actually selected an actor there with a caliber.
Yes.
And whether we can see him in the part or not, that's the quality that we actually need in any relaunch of a show. We need the Sheen, the Eccleston, the Capaldi type of quality to get people taking it seriously again. Because some of these people you see routed in the press in the UK right now to be the Doctor, as I've said many times before, we're down back to the Paul Daniels nonsense of the late 80s, and it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
Stock has fallen considerably, hasn't it, Simon?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And the way I look at it, I've always said this: is you've got to be a certain kind of actor to be able to play the Doctor. Just because you're an actor doesn't mean you can play the Doctor.
Yes,
in the same way that just because because you're an actor, you couldn't necessarily play James Bond or Bet Lynch. It doesn't matter. You've got to be right for the part. And the Doctor requires a certain kind of actor. So although I don't particularly rate Michael Sheen desperately highly, I absolutely agree with you, JT. He's got the caliber. He's got the gravitas. He is the right kind of actor. And I know this might be, it's an unpopular way to look at it in certain circles, but you've got to be the right kind of actor to fill the role. And naming no names, there are certain actors that have taken on the role that are not the right kind of actor to play the role. And there's nothing wrong. It doesn't mean you're a lesser. It doesn't mean you're a lesser actor or anything. It just means that you're not right for that role. It's
correct. Correct.
We have a comment here from the chat, as we mentioned earlier on. There's been a big fan get-together. Yes, our friends at Nerdrotic, Gary Beekler and Jeremy at Geeks and Gamers have pulled off an amazing fan event at Las Vegas over the weekend.
Did they?
Which Father Christopher Miller, he was there. And we've got somebody in the chat. Dr. Blaze says, so Friday Night Tights have done Vegas and was awesome. When's the Facebook meetup?
Yeah, well, we need to think about that.
Never say never, Doctor.
Yeah,
never say
exactly.
never.
I particularly don't want to meet JT. Do you know what I mean? Like, that would be a real chore for me. Do you know?
That's because he's just frightened of standing next to me in public. I don't shadow him with the effervescence glow and the glitter.
With fabulousness, yes.
So stick that cornetto where the sun don't shine.
Some of us have to hide our light under a bushel, don't we, JT? We just have to hide our light.
Well, do you know what? One of the things over here, though, in the UK is that we are very, very confused now about all the restrictions that are going on. Some of the weddings can go on, some of the weddings can't go on. It depends on which county you're in England. It depends if you're in Scotland. Wales is totally different. I think if we
blue hair.
Don't mention the blue hair, purple rinse brigade to me. I'm so annoyed with them. So listen, maybe we should look into it next year and see when Britain starts to calm down. If it ever comes out.
Facebook is meeting.
Exactly.
We've got to do it. We have to do it.
Yeah, and you know what? We could do it where we don't actually have anybody from the show. It's just us. It's just the fans. Like we used to do it back in the early days. We don't invite any of these actor people or anybody from behind the scenes. Just do the fans.
I think we may have troubles trying to convince some of the people at the show not to come.
Well, if they want to come, we'll charge them. Say, right, there's 50 quid, please, love. Come on, Fraser.
I absolutely love this picture that I found earlier in the week. This is Fraser Hines on his way to an event. Come back, Pat Trout, and all is forgiven on his T-shirt. And just underneath it, there's another hashtag. It says Team TARDIS 68 underneath, which I thought was just wonderful.
Brilliant.
Love a bit of Fraser Hines. So yes, he'd always be welcome. Of course he would.
Fight in his corner.
Yeah. So everybody in the chat, what do you think of all that? We've got the Rabbi from another planet. He's here. Nerdrotic meetup equals Vegas. Spacebook meetup equals North Acton. spiritual home
That's
of
funny.
the rehearsal room.
We could always go to Blackpool, the Vegas of Britain. Lots of Doctor Who connections there. Hi, Problem being. Hi, Alan.
Longleat.
Nice to see you.
Longleat. Bring on Longleat.
Alan Collins reminds us that Fraser's T-shirt there is a deliberate callback, isn't it, to a real-life incident on the set of Doctor Who, wasn't it, Simon?
Yeah, absolutely. It was when Patrick Troughton had just taken over, and William Hartnell, bless him, had left, and Annika Wills and Michael Craze turned up on set for the first time with T-shirts exactly emblazoned that. Come back, Bill Hartnell. All is forgiven. Imagine as Pat Troughton, the first thing you see is your co-stars pulling a joke about bring back the old bloke, but he took it in good humour, as Pat Troughton always does, and it's gone down in legend, and still it has. On.
And it sort of set the tone for the 3 years he was on set. For legend would have it.
Do you think we'll ever get T-shirts? Do you think we'll ever get T-shirts? They come back, Jodie Whittaker. No, never mind.
I think it's unlikely. While we're talking about that, I want to know if any of you have ever seen this. We've got the latest cover to the next issue of Doctor Who magazine has just been released. So this is also,
look how small that Jodie picture is. Look how
this is
tiny.
Also 60s orientated. That's quite big compared to some of them, Ian. So this is 5, 6, 8. Available in the shops or through your letterbox if you're a subscriber.
Was this Chris Chibnall? Why I'm leaving? We know why you're leaving, mate. You got pushed out the door.
Yeah, but have you noticed that this is something that's interesting, isn't it? It says Chris Chibnall, why I'm leaving Doctor Who, not Jodie Whittaker, why I'm leaving Doctor Who, not the actual alleged star of the show. So isn't that interesting, Spacebookers?
Yeah,
but it doesn't. Well, Whittaker's just gone.
Whittaker's
just gone utterly. I was going to say, Whittaker's just gone utterly radio silent, hasn't she? Like
she's very wise.
Well, one of the rumors is that her agents told her to say nothing.
I would back that up and say to her, actually do that and stay quiet for the next 2 years if you can, because obviously we know this is something we've got to get out to the fandom as well. They are filming her last episodes and Chibnall's last episodes now, not next year. They're only broadcast next year. They're filming them now. It's going to be a long wait. She'll have to do all the publicity sort of gimmicky stuff for the Radio Times and all that nonsense for next year, but get it all here now and then keep stum. I'm with her agent on that. Just let it go.
It has to be the case. They have to be playing a very, very tight game now for this woman's career to survive this absolute disaster that we've seen. I mean, looking back at DWM, what's impressed me about this magazine, not so much the contents of late. I think we're all aware that it's been suffering, but the covers generally have actually been better than ever the last year or so. There's been some real blinders, mostly geared around the classic show. So I think that's really evocative. It sort of sums up the tragedy, but the romance at the same time of the fact that we have got missing episodes of our beloved Doctor Who.
And I think the other thing that really strikes me with this is dear old Billy Hartnell, who we would not be here without Billy Hartnell. It's as simple as that. No. And we know he loved the show. He didn't want to leave. He was forced to leave through ill health. I honestly think if he was still alive today and in good health, he'd still be in the role today, or they'd have had to wrench him out of the role. So isn't it brilliant, at least, to see him? What would he have thought all those years ago? Would he really believe that he was still on the front cover of a mainstream magazine in W.H. Smith's 60-odd years later, and he would be made up with that? And so, all hail to Billy.
I'd love to speak to his granddaughter, Jessica Carney, isn't it? I don't know what she thinks of it all. I mean, I know that she wrote his biography in the 90s, didn't she? Who's There, it was called.
Who's There?
I'd love to speak to it. It must be a constant source of nourishment to the family, I would say. The longevity of Hartnell's own legacy.
Well, when you think about it, there aren't going to be many people who left, in effect, mainstream media, how many years ago, 60-odd years ago, that are still on the front cover of a mainstream magazine in W.H. Smith's. There's not going to be many stars that can actually pull that off, apart from, the likes of Marilyn Monroe, James Bond, whatever it might be.
The Beatles.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah. And
I just want to acknowledge the comment here from Sun Raider Customs on screen.
What is that?
Is loads better than Friday Night Tights.
Oh.
I've got nothing to say about that, Gary. That's the punters.
Whoa.
Well, I'm going to agree with him because I don't watch the other one. But hi, Sun Raider Customs. I agree with you. Don't watch the other one.
I was going to say, if there has been sort of one nice silver lining to what's happened with the show the last 4 or 5 years, I do think it's made a lot of people go back to classic. I think it's made a lot of people really appreciate classic.
Yeah.
And it's made people want to sort of protect the legacy of those classic Doctors more than ever. So that's sort of a nice side effect.
Yeah, you're right, Charlotte, because we saw that coming out last year when the second Chibnall series destroyed the mythos and destroyed the legend. And then as we know, we were looking at this from our point of view, weren't we, on the show after the thing had been broadcast. But the amount of people that were coming out with the Hartnell First hashtag, which we covered on the show, and all this stuff that came through, and this love and this protection, if you like, for the first incarnation of the Doctor, who is William Hartnell. I thought that was amazing, and I just thought some of these youngsters won't know. But the DVD sales for the original show, you can still get them in places like HMV, are still selling. They're still going. We're now seeing a renaissance with the Blu-ray box sets in 2 versions. Always bestsellers, always at number 1, always at number 2 in the Amazon charts. What more could you want all these years later? Fantastic.
I saw a tweet today asking whether they thought the 5 Doctors was better than the Day of the Doctor. And I wrote saying the 5 Doctors is better than the Doctor.
I would agree with you, Ian.
Classic, isn't it? We talk about Classic Who, and I've seen so many pictures of Classic Who recently, cartoons, pictures from the past and stuff like that. So it looks like Classic is really coming back in a big way. And it's all thanks to Chibnall.
It is, yeah. And Charlotte's right. People have left the show last year and they're all going back to the original stuff, which is freely available and fantastic and welcome. and join us, because that's the area you want to get into.
In our own live chat at the moment, this is going on. TARDIS Time said, type 1 if you think William Hartnell is the first and only First Doctor. We've got a wall of ones all the way down our chat here. So yeah, I think that's from all over the world, all our various viewers.
That literally sends shivers down my spine, just knowing that everybody. That's just made me go a little bit oogly, just knowing that everybody's typing 1.
You sentimental Simon Le Bon you.
I'm an old romantic.
You are.
Crashing us back into 2021, everybody. A couple of you may wish to avert your gaze from this. This is the very latest. This is an example of how not to do it, everybody. How not to do it. Have you ever seen a publicity picture as bad as this one for Series 13? It's the very definition of we don't give a shit anymore.
What's the matter with Yaz then? She's just in the background looking.
She's in a sulk. I'll tell you why she's in a sulk, because she's got sidelined for John Bishop, hasn't she?
Well, it's more simple than that. It's the number 8. It's 10 minutes later again. That's what it is.
Well, I have to say, for this particular Yaz, the only way is not up.
There's a reference. Say, I don't know if you guys have kept track, but they're doing like a clue thing. Like the social accounts. Well, no, but they're doing like this. Apparently, in the trailer, there was like the word mystery, and like they're doing this really weird scavenger hunt online.
Yeah.
And I think the reason Yaz in that picture, there's something to do with her with this scavenger hunt. That's the reason why she looks like
why.
I don't think people can be bothered with that kind of thing anymore. I think that kind of interactivity is a little out of date, Charlotte.
80s.
No, I'd say when the internet arrived. When the internet arrived in the late 90s, I remember doing something very similar on the BBC websites between programs for something very similar in 99. And when very early days of the internet, where we were all on dial-up and we were practicing with. Do you remember that? It was like a treasure trail.
Wasn't it? There's a series of numbers, and you had to decode them, and you could enter them somehow into the BBC's original website.
The one. Yes, that's right. Yeah, I remember that. So that shows you how dated it is. But sorry, Charlotte.
I was going to say, I think the bigger problem is it's not that it's a dated thing, because I think more people are doing this. It's the fact that you're doing this at a time now when the show's got so less interaction, so less interest.
People don't care. This is
something you should have done Series 11. You shouldn't be doing this now. It's just sort of
it's
desperation. It's desperation, simple as that.
Yeah, it's not just that. I mean, if you look at that picture, can you bring that picture up again, Dan? If you look at the picture,
I've removed
have you lost it?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, listen. Look at that. Now that does not scream Doctor Who at all. None of them look like they're in Doctor Who. She does not look like the Doctor. It doesn't say Doctor Who. It looks more like something from Blue Peter or Why Don't You or something like that. This is a new children's show. It doesn't say science fiction, adventure, fantasy at all.
That's exactly what I said.
Compare that to something like from Tom's Day.
It could be a promo picture from any TV show of any genre from anywhere in the world. It's incredibly bland, low effort. They've just stamped the logo in the corner. I think if you were to look at this compared to the promo pictures from even, I hate to say this, even from 3 years ago, let alone 5, 6, 10, 12, it is just sort of, you've got to spare 5 minutes in your lunch break, go and stand over there.
It's lazy, shoddy, uncreative, and it's just them giving up the ghost now. That proves that they just don't care. They don't care. They've got no imagination. Wrong people.
Biker Grove. That's very good. It's Biker Grove. That's what it is.
Usually, why I Doctor Who is usually doing the Doctor Who pose, isn't he? He's usually doing some kind of Doctor Who pose or something. Do you know what I mean? Some kind of just nothing there. Yeah.
Some of the early pictures of Whittaker were almost, before she'd actually been on screen, we didn't realise how awful she was. Were almost evocative. And now it's like all pretenses are just gone. Everybody's just marking time. And as Alan Collins says, how on earth did it get to this?
Who knows? They let Chris Chibnall in.
Not going to stoke anybody's boiler.
And is it against the BBC's thing to write Doctor Who? Why have they just got Who?
No, it's that was the other side of the branding. That came out in 2017 when they launched the branding with that little video with the Earthshock music from it.
All right. So it's just got Who then.
Yeah, they put that. They were just trying to be hip, and missed it by miles.
We've got some very creative comments in the chat, as always. Matthew Pounder says, looks like a community sentence, community service.
Misfits.
Cleaning off graffiti. And Darren Powis, I think, hits it in the back of the net. This one's the winner. It's, yes, when it comes
You've lost it.
Screen, when it comes up on
It's
screen.
the same one, mate.
It's the same one. No. The chat's jumped on me. Doctor Who, gone to the wall.
Gone to the wall, yeah. Very good, Darren.
Well done.
And
He's here all week.
The thing is, the people out there who've been hearing that this is a hit show, they're going to find this quite confusing, I think. It's confusing the issue. It's confusing the signal about what Doctor Who is supposed to be. It's confusing the idea about who their intended marketplace is and why you would wish to turn up in the first place. Sorry, Charlotte, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, and also, I'm sorry, John just doesn't look right next to those two. He just doesn't fit. I thought I knew he'd be a good, personality, but I just thought, you put him next to Whittaker and Manip, and he just looks like he shouldn't be there. Do you know? They've just dragged him from the street and has just, put him in the picture almost.
Well, just imagine it, Charlotte. Imagine that photograph in the Radio Times or the TV Times the week these things start to go out again later in the year. The public, they don't care. They're not going to look at it. It's a page turner straight away because it doesn't scream Doctor Who. What you want from a photograph that's done Doctor Who is you want alien feel. Back in the days, they would have coloured lighting or they would have dry ice or the odd monster and stuff like that. It's got to look science fiction, adventure fantasy. It's got to draw you in. It's got to get you excited. And that doesn't.
Well, and also, I think the thing is with those old publicity photos from back in the day, even if you didn't have the coloured lights and the Dalek in the background or whatever, you think of, let's say, Tom Baker, which was at the height of popularity. Any photo with Tom Baker, he immediately looked alien. He looked like
Doctor.
He got some character. He looked like somebody that you wanted to spend some time with and had got something to say and something a bit quirky about him. The three of them together.
Well, she doesn't look like the Doctor, Simon, does she? I mean, she's looking there, and she doesn't look like the Doctor because she isn't really.
There's no interest. So you think of those Tom Baker pictures; they still looked slightly quirky. Even if he was just standing on a street corner, exactly like these guys are, he would look quirky and interesting, and you'd want to spend time with him. I don't want to spend any time with them.
He look iconic. I mean, that's the word. I think we hear this word so often now. It's a little overused. The word iconic.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I think that's what Tom has. He has that charisma that sort of burns its way through a screen like that. He could make standing anywhere, doing anything, seem interesting. I think this not only seems like people everybody involved with current Doctor Who just treading water until it's game over, just marking time. But I think the confusing the audience and not sort of see for everything that they said at Comic-Con and for the little things that they've said since this shows what they actually mean, what they actually intend on bringing, which is next to nothing. Don't listen to what people say. Look at what they do. And this is the best they've got.
You've also been extremely generous again there, Dan. And I do say this a lot about you. You're very generous because you've actually assumed there is an audience. There is no audience. There's no audience. It's not there, is it? I mean, they're not watching it.
And what audience there is, they're not looking at the publicity photos anyway. If there is a small audience, they just don't care.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and I also think it really highlights how dull Jodie's costume is. Because she hasn't got that coat on, and without the coat, there's no shape to that outfit. There's nothing to strike you about.
But that's their attention. That's that they want. They don't want you to see a shape of a female. They don't want to see anything related to a sexy female or a good-looking female or female's body. They don't want that. That's their philosophy.
They have actually. There was a picture, it's on the magazine cover there, where she is in the coat with those two, and she still looks bored to death and doesn't want to be there. She's totally bland. She's not the Doctor. Simple as that. Can't even take a photograph properly.
But at least the coat's got a bit of something to draw your eye. It's a little bit more eccentric. It
gives her a silhouette.
More doctoring.
Yeah. Well, that's was the quote, wasn't it? As long as the Doctor's got lapels to do something with, to pull on, to turn up, or to flip down, or to pin something to, then it looks like the Doctor. And you remove the coat from the Doctor, and particularly if there's no winged collar.
Sorry, go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
If there's no winged collar to a shirt, for example, then you've got another signifier of the Doctor gone too. So not only have you got no silhouette, you've got no fine details either. Moving on a little from that, everybody, I just want to talk about your TARDIS time in the chat. Says Dan, can you please say Eki Thump? It's okay if you don't want to. Well, firstly, I just have, and secondly, why?
Why? Eki Thump. Eki Thump.
Eki Thump. We can all say Eki Thump.
Eki Thump.
I mean, the thing is, though, listening to all of us, it makes us sound, it's like we're really hard on this era, which we should be.
This era's been hard on us.
I know it has. Right, but the thing is, though, I just like to make it totally clear. We're not basically having a go at the people, like Jodie and stuff like them personally. We're just having a go at the actual.
You speak for yourself.
Oh, okay. I'm speaking myself.
I tell you, if I have a meter in the queue in the Burger King, I'll be having a word. Honest to God.
Well, I said I have nothing against Jodie as a person or Chibnall as a person, but what they've done to Doctor Who is definitely the worst thing they've done to Doctor Who. So there you go. That's all I can say. So
it's time to get happy, I think, everybody. And
let's get happy.
Unless you're JT, and if you've got your headphones on, because yes, it's time. It's absolutely time to take our sojourn back through the past.
No, just tell me when.
The highlights and the lowlights on this day in Doctor Who history with our friend Simon Horton and his 500-year diary.
We're going to have to change that.
Thank God.
For me this time?
Thank God.
What's going on this time, Simon?
Well, this week we're marking three very, very big birthdays and one sad passing. On Friday, it's the birthday of Sophie Aldred and Sylvester McCoy. So we're wishing them a very, very happy birthday. I still think it's remarkable that they both happen to have their birthday on exactly the same day.
Apparently, this is how they bonded as well when they very first met.
Absolutely.
Sophie being interviewed about this, that they sat down, had a bit of a chat, and they tried to find the way that we all do when we've got new work colleagues. What have you got in common? What haven't you? And this came up pretty early on.
It's kind of nuts, isn't it? In much the same way that Tom Baker and Elizabeth Sladen both bonded because they both came from Liverpool. Sophie and Sylvester, bonded because they had the same birthday. Sophie was in her mid-20s when she started as Ace. Sylvester was 20 years old in his mid-40s when he started back in 87. Let's they did 9 stories together, bless them, which is remarkable when you think about it. They only did 9 stories together. Closing the whole of the classic run-outs, this pair, ended the classic run with Survival. And I still find it amazing. They only did 9 television stories together because you just feel like they did years together in the best possible sense. Do you know what I mean? They're just an inseparable team. They're probably, of all of the companion Doctor relationships, they're probably the most inseparable team that I can think of. From the classic run, certainly.
I have to agree with that, and I think it's partly because we saw and felt them grow together, them bond, and that relationship kind of get a little bit pulled out of shape, and then push one another. What do you think, JT? What is about these two actors?
Well, obviously, because their personal rapport was way up there, that comes across in the characters on screen. And I think it also helped that they had the luxury of being able to have an input, of course, from their second series on, or still second series on. I do think there's other companion Doctor relationships that would challenge that, Simon. Obviously, Tom and Liz are to a classic. John and Katie. And the whole effect of that was when that companion leaves them, there is an impact on the lead as well, and you can blatantly see it in the way Pertwee plays it and the way Tom plays it when Liz goes.
I suppose it was the nature of the stories, though, JT. They were deeper.
Well, and also,
there was a theme, wasn't it? It wasn't about those stories weren't about the Doctor; they were about Ace, and it was hinted that he had manipulated her an awful lot into situations just to see how she would react to that situation.
It's incredible that she's still talking to him all these decades on, I think so.
The reason I tend to think of these two as the kind of quintessential inseparable pair is because, yeah, you're right, JT. Of course, nobody loves Liz Sladen and Tom Baker partnership more than me. But the difference is with, for example, Tom, we saw him bond very well with other companions as well. Whereas with Sylvester... Well, I thought he did. I thought he bonded brilliantly.
I'm just being a bit naughty.
I know you are. Tom did bond well with Jameson, but I thought he bonded brilliantly with the character of Leela. Same with Roman. So whereas with Sylvester, I don't feel he ever bonded well with Mel, and so the only real companion that he ever had was Ace. So that's why I kind of think of them as.
That's fair enough, because we never got to see. I do exactly.
Who? What about you,
give over,
guys?
Give over.
David, I would go with that. I would go with David Tennant and Billy Piper.
Well, let's not get.
I would go with Tennant and Catherine Tate.
There
you go. See, thank God you guys mentioned New Who. You guys are stuck in classic. New Who's cool too.
There's nothing wrong with that. We've already discussed. It's having a renaissance. It's back. It's never going to change. It's there. Anyway, it's there to discover. It's fabulous.
Sticking with classic Who, I'm afraid. Also on Friday, we celebrate the birthday, bless him, of Anthony Ainley, who would be 89 had he not died, bless him, in 2004.
89.
Age 71.
He was great.
Anthony Ainley's a genius. I mean, a little bit of background. He was the son of the renowned West End actor Henry Ainley. He started off with an uncredited role, actually, in You Only Live Twice, the James Bond film.
Yes, he did.
Really?
Yeah, he did.
I did.
He moved on to play Reverend Emilius in The Palaces in 1964, and that is where John Nathan Turner, who was the production manager for The Palaces, a BBC production, that's where John Nathan Turner met him and saw him at work, and thus that he 6 years later, whatever it was, he offered him the role of the Master without even having an audition. He just handed the role to the one and only Anthony Ainley. And of course, Anthony Ainley then played Tremas, which was horribly an anagram of the Master. And I'll never ever forgive Chris Bidmead for giving him an anagram of the Master in Keeper of Traken. But Ainley then went on to play the Master in 10 stories, and sticking with pseudonyms. Course, famously, he had pseudonyms in the Radio Times that John Nathan Turner gave him to hide the identity of the Master returning. The best ones have to be Neil Toynay. Which was an anagram of Tony Ainley for Castrovalva when he was the Portreeve, and the most bizarre of all of them was James Stoker, which was an anagram of Master's Joke. Who was going to work that one out for the King's Demons, and so nobody saw him. So coming. My very favourite performance of Anthony Ainley that I've talked about before is the Destiny of the Doctor's piece game. He is literally, he acts anybody else off the screen. He's brilliant. I think the footage for that is put on the Keeper of Traken DVD. I think it hasn't appeared on Blu-ray yet, but I think it's on the Keeper of Traken DVD. It's probably on YouTube. Go and look up the Destiny of the Doctor's footage of Anthony Ainley.
Wonderful. We had a bit of it last week when we played the trailer in the advert section. But yeah, I'd like to think that if he was still alive, they would have got Anthony Ainley back for the confrontation with Missy at the end of series 10 there, Sean.
They wouldn't.
They wouldn't.
They probably wouldn't. He'd have been well into his 80s, but I'd have loved to.
You know what? He is a really good master, and you know, I wish that this kind of master went into the New Who, and you know, because the way the Sims plays the master is just ridiculous in my opinion, absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, he and Roger was the best masters in my opinion. You know,
I agree.
So rest in peace, Anthony Ainley, and happy birthday for Friday, of course.
Indeed. And so finally today, sadly today, this very day, we mark the very, very sad passing in 1990 of the great Graham Williams. Died in 1990, aged just 45. He went far too young. For those who are not familiar with Graham Williams, maybe not quite so familiar with the classic series as some of us are, he replaced Philip Hinchcliffe in series 15, he was kicked off. Philip Hinchcliffe was kicked off, incredibly, and went on to produce Target, which ironically was the project that Graham Williams had developed. So the BBC literally swapped their roles round, and told Graham Williams to tone down the violence and horror that had been so incredibly successful during the Philip Hinchcliffe years and had taken it to unprecedented heights. And just goes to prove what I've always said, that the BBC don't know what to do with Doctor Who. They get it wrong every time. And so Graham Williams came in. And let's not forget, Graham Williams introduced K9, Romana, the Black and White Guardians. All of these things are now iconic lore of Doctor Who that we're all still enjoying.
He gets a little bit overlooked, doesn't he? Because the Hinchcliffe stuff is so lauded. But 45 was no age. It's tragic every time I hear that.
And he worked on series 15, 16 and 17, produced 17 stories. Let's not forget, Dan, one of them is very close to our heart because his very first story, The Horror of Fang Rock, was produced in Birmingham.
Yes,
in Pebble Mill.
Yes, in
there we go. That's
wondrous Wonderland.
Is that still there?
No, it's
no, I didn't think so. They got rid of it a long time ago. Was it a car park?
Down,
it's a housing. It's a housing estate now, all new red brick houses. It's tragic when you drive along that stretch on your way to Edgbaston there. It's not very far from me at all, just 6 miles.
Well, the whole country knew that drive and those houses, didn't they? Thanks to Pebble Mill at once. Lovely.
It was the only Doctor Who story to be produced at Pebble Mill because they couldn't get studios in London. The only other instance that Doctor Who went there, of course, was for K9 and Company. That was also produced there. Anybody else ever go to Pebble Mill? I was lucky enough to have worked there for a few years. Anybody else get to Pebble Mill?
No, never got there.
Never passed there, never went inside.
I mean, like you,
I went
Dan,
there once.
You went once. Like you, Dan, it's just down the road for me. It's about half an hour's drive away for me. So great. Pebble Mill was in my blood, and I was lucky to work there a few years ago. Anyway, so back to Graham Williams. As I say, he also partly directed, as well as producing. He also partly directed Nightmare of Eden when the director Alan Bromley quit in a bit of a huff, by all accounts. Controversial, who knows? Reportedly, allegedly. And he also, let's not forget, he also co-wrote with Douglas Adams' script editor, City of Death, which is one of the absolutely all greats, the very, very fondly remembered City of Death. And he also co-wrote the not quite so fondly remembered Invasion of Time.
Oh, bless.
And he was going to write, of course, for season 23. He was to write The Nightmare Fair and bring back the Celestial Toymaker in
what
season
you're talking about there, Simon, seems to be a man, a producer, a creative who would step into a breach at any given point. You've got to respect somebody like that, haven't you, Ian? I mean, you do this, you do a bit of everything, don't you?
Yeah, I do. But as I said, Classic Who, in my opinion, Classic Who was slightly better than New Who, in my opinion. Only because I only say that because I grew up with Classic Who before I came to New Who, and I'm sure, even though JT disagrees with me a lot, but he still loves me anyway. I know that. We both grew up with Classic Who. We both, and same thing with Simon as well. So we understand it more than New Who.
Yeah.
I like New Who. So.
Well, classic. I hate the term Classic Who. It makes it sound like classic Star Trek. Doctor Who, between 1963 and 1989, was one continual story, one continual series about the same continual character. Yeah. What's ruined the latest version for me is that from 9 onwards, everything reads to Chris Chibnall and Jodie Whittaker. And for me, I can't get my head around that. I can't do it. So I've just lost interest and go back to proper Doctor Who, where it's the same character through 7 different faces.
That's a very strong word, ruined, isn't it, Charlotte?
Yeah, I think the problem is, and this is I will always defend New Who because that's where I got introduced to the show.
I like New Who.
I can see its faults, and I think the problem was it became, I don't know, the good, in Classic, it had its fan base, it was big, but it wasn't cool or sexy or those sort of things. Was when it came back, it became
definitely not. No.
So
no, but do you know the thing I hated about New Who mostly though? Apart from the really crappy stories and the intersectional rubbish. Apart from that, as I hated that they made the Doctor seem like this all-powerful God. Yeah, I hated that because in Classic Who he was just this guy with a box and going in adventures and stuff. And I hate it where everything is scared of him. The Daleks are scared of him. You know, everybody's scared. And I'm like, oh, for God's sakes, it was never like
that's
this.
what I mean.
It was never like that.
I like the fact that amongst his people, he was kind of an ordinary man.
Yes, that's what I like.
An ordinary guy working in presumably quite a bureaucratic little job, who rebelled in the same way that people kind of rebel almost every day on the weekly in their own little way, certainly in a British way. And that's how I always viewed the character. Not as that mythic swaggering hero, although I didn't find that a major turn-off. I saw it as a kind of evolution and probably a trade-off that was worth having. But it's completely, generally I think so. I think
now they should drop it though.
But now we're in wherever we are with it. It's completely unrecognizable, and they need to get not just back to basics, but back to the very fundamentals.
But I think But I think what's interesting is, going back to Graham Williams. This to me is the classic example of where, as I say, Philip Hinchcliffe for his 3 years took Doctor Who to incredible new heights. It had never done better. Graham Williams came in and was given an entirely new brief, and this goes along with what you guys are just saying. Basically, it's still the same story. So although Graham Williams completely pretty much reinvented it, it's a very, very different show under Graham Williams than it was under Philip Hinchcliffe. But it's still, you can tell it's still essentially the same chemical equation making up that show. It's just put together in a slightly different order, and you end up with a slightly different result. But it's the same show, and that to me is what the BBC used to be very good at doing.
Yeah, I mean, we have to point out what you've just said there as well, Simon. Graham Williams was brought in as the producer with a remit by his bosses to be able to say, lighten this show up, because they have bloody Mary Whitehouse on their back every Saturday. And Graham did.
I suspect that when his seasons do start to make it to Blu-ray in these fabulous Blu-ray collection box sets, that
season 17 coming soon, watch this space.
In whichever format, as soon as they start to trickle out, I think that there'll be a reappraisal of Graham's contribution.
I hope so.
In line with the practical things that were pressing on his time like that. I'm not saying that people will make allowances as such, but I think that people will find the groove of that era, get on board with it, and just get attuned to where the series was at that particular point. But I think we have to move on now and go back.
I'm about to say something
to the 21st century. Go on, Ian. You chime in first.
No, I was just saying that the best one, the classic Who. I like classic Who because it was in line with everything that was happening that time. You'd have the underdog that would come into a situation where it looks like nobody could win, and he would definitely win. And that's what I liked about Doctor Who. In New Doctor Who, they changed all that, where everybody was scared of him. The universe knew who he was. It was up to him to save the universe. And I just thought it was just going in the wrong direction. But I do understand what you said, Dan, that things have to evolve. And that was one of the things that evolved from Doctor Who. Well, I just wanted to go back. I just wanted to go back.
I think that by the time we reconnected with the character in the specific, I think Russell T Davies was right to reinvent the series. I think he was right to frame the mythology the way that he did back in 2005, and in reframing that it did need the Doctor to be an evolved version of the same character in some way. So I think it was inevitable, but I believe that at some point, and I think that Stephen Moffat. Partly, I think he had an opportunity to reset that and didn't take it. He actually took it.
He did. He did reset it.
I think he took it up further.
I think he took it up further.
Where the Doctor became more of a manipulator than ever and knew everything that was going on. But that does chime in with our major discussion point we're going to come to in a little while. But thanks for all that, Simon. Thanks for digging in deep there. Some great memories as always. Brace yourselves. We're on our way back, everybody. Now. So we talk about the classic series. We talk about the classic series of Doctor Who there, and at the moment, I've just done a complete run of the classic show. But as somebody who makes Doctor Who content and has a lot of conversations with you guys and with my friends here, I'm back watching classic Doctor Who at the moment. I'm watching one very specific Doctor Who story. I'm not going to tell you which one. I'm not going to tell you which one. But I'm rewatching this story, and it's one that I've seen multiple times, as I have with most. But this particular story, every time I watch it, it confounds me that bit more. And it's a case of what? It's a case of, am I getting thicker as I get older, as my attention span,
it's the cakes.
As my attention span started to shorten, I keep asking myself, or is it just too much hard sci-fi for Doctor Who? These are stories, as with all classic Doctor Who, I've watched over and over again, seriously, and with a lot of new Who too, Ian. These are stories that I've now lived with for a decade and a half.
Yeah,
it makes me wonder. I'm a hardcore Doctor Who fan, and I watch a lot of sci-fi. But Doctor Who has a broader appeal than that, I think, to the general public. And sometimes and I've met lots of people like this, where it's the only kind of geeky related show that a lot of normies watch.
Yes,
they consider it their sprinkling of the bizarre and of the fantasy, and some of them don't even know why they like it. They just know they wouldn't miss it, and it's. For that one, used to be for that one sort of 45-minute period once a week for 13 Saturdays of the year, it took them somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But then I think about the classic show, and Charlotte, you were mentioning earlier on in the last segment about how that was at the end of the classic run, and it had got to this place where I think because sci-fi itself too was a little out of fashion, where the general public, when they thought of Doctor Who, they had this idea, and it had culminated, I think, when the show completely vanished from screens. There was this perception that Doctor Who was complex, obscure, only for people who studied it, really studied every line of it, and were slightly detached from reality, and that therefore the scripts weren't worth hearing and investing in. I think it got to, and it was largely undeserving. I mean, I remember when they started running repeats in 1992 on BBC Two. They started putting out repeats at around 6:30 on a Friday evening. They started with the Time Meddler, and I moved in circles. A lot of my friends were non-geeks, and proudly so, and I took a lot of heat for loving Doctor Who. But some of them, when they saw that it was back with these new repeats, they kind of indulged me and they watched it. And that, I think it was that night, like Friday night at the pub after the Time Meddler started. I remember one guy in particular said, I gave it a go. I watched your show. I watched Doctor Who. He looked at me and he said, didn't understand a bleeping word of it, and never watched again. So I got to thinking as to, what is the public perception of Doctor Who? What is the fans' perception of Doctor Who? And the idea of these stories, these sci-fi stories, sci-fi and fantasy stories, is Doctor Who a sci-fi show, or is it a fantasy show that just does sci-fi? And does it have to be hard sci-fi? Do the general public here, do they recognize a difference between hard sci-fi and sci-fi? And more to the point, those stories that go a little bit over people's heads, people I've spoken to, they will admit that the story kind of went over their heads and they didn't get it, but they enjoyed it anyway. So the general question I wanted to ask you out there watching on YouTube, and you guys here, my esteemed colleagues in fandom, is do we need to understand a story to appreciate it, Ian?
Of course you do, for God's sake.
But ask the general public. Look.
So
tell me, Ian, to those people out there who say, "Oh, I love Doctor Who. I wouldn't miss it. Didn't understand it, but I wouldn't miss it." Where does that come from?
Well, I don't know. I never met anyone that said they liked Doctor Who and they didn't understand it. Never. Not in my lifetime of being a fan of Doctor Who.
I'm not claiming on the weekly sort of every episode they didn't understand, but regularly, some weeks it's like, whoa.
When I was a lot younger, when I was in my early teens, I used to watch Tom Bacon. Sometimes I didn't understand the story, but I was such a fan of Doctor Who. If you're talking about that kind of people, yeah, sure. My mum watches movies, and she watched the Endgame. She enjoyed it, but she couldn't tell me what happened. Do you know what I mean? She'd sit there and go, well, that guy punched that guy and this, that. But I enjoyed it. I didn't understand what's going on, but I enjoyed it. But for Doctor Who, I think it's really important that people understand what's going on. How could you get excited if you don't understand what's going on? It makes no sense.
I think music and performances and good characterization can do that, JT. What do you think?
Yeah, I disagree. I think you can. I think you can enjoy Doctor Who without understanding a particular story. There is a difference between fans and the public, and I'm talking UK public here, again, we have to point out that Doctor Who is ingrained in the United Kingdom. It is part of our culture. It's our heritage, which is why you can't mess around with certain people that much watching this show. You can't do too much to it to move it into a progressive state, because it's there. It's with Sherlock and Robin Hood. You know, it's part of our psyche. And we get it. And the reason that people watch it is because it's entertainment. And, you know, with some entertainment, you don't have to buy into it 100%. If you're coming away thinking, actually, that was a cracking 25 minutes or half an hour or 40 minutes or whatever it is, that's what you need to have a successful show. So, you know, if you get something out of it, and this is where New Who misses it by miles, because a lot of the stories are totally unforgettable. You whoosh, they've gone, whoosh,
and
gone,
they
whoosh,
move
gone.
so fast, don't they? Before you get a chance to process.
So how could you soak that in? So, you know, the fact that it was popular at one point was simply because of the acting talent and the public liking that and appreciating it, and it had monsters in it and baddies. But they would have gone away thinking, well, that was good. Didn't get the story on most of it. So I think there is a difference between the fans and the public, and I think you can sit down and watch something. I mean, I used to sit down and watch things like Dynasty, hadn't a bloody clue what was going on, but I still like the fact that, you know, oh yeah. I mean, you can tune into EastEnders now if you're one of the 2 million doing that, and I'm sure you haven't a clue what's going on. But, you know, it's a real case of, yeah, you can take something out of that.
Simon, there's a message here from Crimpling Doubloon in the chat that says the mystery and impossible events of old episode 1s would, I think, draw in the general audience who ordinarily would say they don't like sci-fi. There was a way of, I suppose, you know, against what JT's just been describing, that momentum of the new show where it hits you and it grabs you, on that trip of a lifetime and doesn't let you go. And the way that they would lead you into the uncanny or the otherworldly with classic Doctor Who.
Well, yeah, you were definitely drawn in more on classic Who than you are now, where it's, you know, just hit you and we're off and running. To me, I think you don't have to understand Who to appreciate it. But I think the thing is, what you've got to bear in mind is there's kind of 2 levels of understanding here. And that's that a story has to have some sort of internal sense. So when the public, because I think the public don't really understand Doctor Who, but as I say, to be precise on this, if you take something like, let's say, The Talons of Wen Chiang, do the general public understand the minutiae of the fact that Wen Chiang is actually a war criminal from the 51st century called Magnus Greel, who was known as the Butcher of Brisbane, who led an army against the... No, they don't care about any of that. They don't understand that. They don't get it. What they do understand is this is a rollicking good adventure in Victorian London. It's got giant rats in it. There's bits of it set in a theatre with a Chinese bloke that does tricks. That's what they understand. So no, they don't understand. They don't understand the tiny little details that we then write theses on and analyse. They don't understand that. That's what they mean when they say, "I don't understand Doctor Who." So but they do understand the basics of it, and that's what they enjoy. That's why you don't have to actually understand the minutiae. You just have to understand.
Oh, that's twice he said that. The
minutiae.
What I want to ask you, Charlotte, was kind of what minutiae from how Simon was describing there. Do you think part of it as well is the clash of the everyday with the otherworldly, and that if you're somebody who has just watched, I don't know, All Creatures Great and Small, Emmerdale, Country File, anything involving fields, basically.
Don't bring Country File into it.
Or just silly old sitcoms, whatever else. And then this just drops into the schedule, and it's a bit of this, and it's a bit of that. Is that part of what sets people kind of on the back foot, and to the point where they don't really know what to make of it?
Yeah, I think Doctor Who is such a unique show because it doesn't have to keep to one genre. You can have like a horror, like sort of in classic, if you want to do like a Hinchcliffe, or you can have something that's a bit lighter. You can have a pure historical, or you can have pure sci-fi with spaceships and like everything that you'd expect of a sci-fi program. And I think because of the idea of the TARDIS, because of the idea of Time Lords and the sort of basic ideas, it basically means you haven't got a lot of limits if you really want to try with this show. And I think that's what the British public love about it. But I also think, to do with what you're saying about understanding, I think that's the fun sometimes of maybe revisiting. I think this show's also got that not a lot of other shows you would want to maybe go back and watch so much. But you with Doctor Who, you might think, actually, I didn't quite understand that first time. I'll watch it again. It's like recently,
particularly now in the 21st century, where we can.
No, that's the difference. Yeah, that's the difference there. What Charlotte's talking about, that we as fans will go back and revisit, but the public won't.
Yeah, yes. I think, you know what?
But that's what I'm saying. I think it's both sides to it.
I think it's the concept. The concept's very simple. Man in the box travels through time, goes on adventures. Yep. And I think that people are not into Doctor Who. They get that concept. And it's a really good concept. It's a concept you can come back to time and time again, because you're talking about different time zones, different adventures and stuff. So it's a good concept. That's why people who don't really understand Who comes back to it. But I still maintain that to have a good show, have a good series, people have to understand what's going on. And if they don't understand what's going on, that means it's a problem with the writing. That's where
proper
Doctor Who
about writing. But sorry, guys, but yeah, I mean, what I want to say about what you were just saying, though, Ian, I suppose that's where storytelling can, if you can bring it in on two different levels. So whether you understand, for example, whether you've seen that clip of the Doctor and Leela, JT, in the TARDIS all those years ago with him explain, whether you understand that the TARDIS, as Charlotte was saying, whether the TARDIS is dimensionally transcendental or not, or whether it's just a magic door, it works just as well in the context of a given plot. It's kind of backs up what Ian's just been saying.
Well, sort of, but I'm going to challenge it, because in the context of the TARDIS, people just know it as it's inside, it's bigger on the inside. Now we get it, and we've moved on. You know, it's part of British heritage, it's part of our culture. It's a police box, but it's infinity inside. We're over that. We got through that in the 60s. But the other side about the storytelling, to go to Ian's point and Simon's point, take the Talons of Weng Chiang as the example Simon gave out. The good storytelling in that, the absolutely brilliant writing of that, because it was split into those episodes, occasionally a character, usually the Doctor, would remind you that Magnus Greel was from the future and was a criminal. Yeah. And there you go. There you go. It's back again. You've been reminded. And part of the story.
So they would mine the scripts with those reminders of where we were
over 4 or 6 weeks.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Well, and also, not sort of wanting to get too deeply technical on all this, but I do believe that there is, as long as a script has some sort of internal logic, you don't have to understand all of the external logic, if that kind of makes sense. To take something completely off the wall, such as Kinder, for example, that has an internal logic. You know roughly what's going on. There's a group of colonists have landed on the planet. They're scientists. They're doing experiments, so on and so forth. There's a group of natives who are not very pleased about them being there. And there's an alien monster out there. And that's kind of in its most basic form. So it forms this kind of internal logic. Now, if you try to unpick it and actually make sense of it all, that's when you're going to struggle. But that doesn't matter.
But my point, Simon, is they should never have that script commissioned. If it doesn't make any sense on the page, it should never be commissioned. And if I was showrunner, I would never make that show.
But it does have the internal logic.
That's not the point. The point is it's got to talk to the audience. That's the whole point of making stuff.
But it does talk to the audience.
But Ian,
I'm just saying, if it doesn't talk to the audience, that's, for me, doesn't make sense. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but you can talk to an audience more than the actual story, if that makes sense. You can talk
No, you can't.
Through character.
No, you can't. Look, as a filmmaker, like for instance, I went to see if you have to work hard and trying to understand stuff, you failed, in my opinion. You've got to find the balance between being clever and making sure it reaches the wider audience. That's your job as a showrunner. That's your job as a storyteller. That's what you have to do.
But if that's the case, then on that logic, we're going to throw out 2001: A Space Odyssey.
I don't like 2001: A Space Odyssey.
But a lot of people do.
I know.
Throw out Blade Runner. We're going to throw out Eraserhead.
No. Blade Runner you can understand.
These are by some of the greatest, most successful directors of all time.
Yes, Simon, you're absolutely right, Simon. And do you know what? I'm not going to argue with you. But the problem is, for me, that 2001 never worked for me.
Well, that's
just
it.
for me.
It's for you. It's for you personally.
Yeah.
Because I love
personally.
things that don't actually make sense. I love 2001 because it doesn't make sense. I love Blade Runner. I love Kinder. I love Warriors Gate because they don't make sense.
Simon, that for some of us, depending on the kind of characters that we are, when a plot drops us in the middle of something, and we've got to sort of kind of place our faith that the current will take us somewhere to some sort of ground that we will be able to relate to, or whether it purposefully takes us by the hand and leads us, if not step by step, then certainly to hit certain points that will be recognizable markers of either things that we've seen or read before. It's going to depend on who we are and how we process story, in the same way that we've got different learning styles as people. But
also, I think the thing is here, and again, we're kind of getting quite deep on this one, but I would compare it, for example, with a Turner painting. You look at a Turner painting and it makes complete sense. I
hear what you're saying. It's art.
Whereas I look at a Dali painting or an abstract painting, it doesn't make sense, but it's still beautiful and it's got merit in its own right.
And we're not talking about paintings. We're talking about scripts. We're talking about stuff that's supposed to talk to the audience, as a story.
That's what I was saying, Ian. Like, for example, I love Boomtown. I love that episode. And I know for some people, they see it as a bit of a silly sort of like, they needed to fill a spot before the big finale sort of episode. It's a bottle episode.
I like Boomtown.
But the reason why I love that episode is because of the character work in that episode. Because they took the Slovene that weren't received well. They were seen as a joke. They were seen as this like really too cheesy sort of alien. And they actually, when they got Margaret and said, what happens if the Doctor catches up with an alien after he's defeated them? What's the consequences? And that's what that story's about to me, and that's why I love it, because it's the rare.
It made sense, right?
But why?
Yeah, but that's my point. Now I don't love that for the story. It's the character work, and that's your choice.
Yeah, sure.
So certain things will register more than others for the story.
On screen at the moment, we're looking at images from several stories that have confounded Doctor Who fans for the longest time. Some of them for a really long time. For
the
decades,
Weeping Angels confound us?
I think these are the stories that I see where they get named as the more complex or the more disturbing, or both. And people don't necessarily always know why they've responded in the way that they have, but they just do. So, for example, we've got Ghostlight up on screen. PD Rich is there watching in the chat and said Ghostlight was like that. Absolutely, it was. People still talk about that now. You've seen these stories again dozens of times in some cases. Are you in any more possession of what it's all about now than you were 30 years ago? Maybe not. We've got Planet of Spiders up on screen too, the Buddhist story written by Barry Letts. There's Legopolis with its dense mathematical elements to that story, courtesy of Christopher H. Bidmead. Simon, you mentioned Kinder there. Every time I watch Kinder, sometimes I think I've got it. I know exactly. I understand it. And then when somebody asks me, okay, explain Kinder, then I go, well, it's about it. Well, it's kind of like
that thing you read, Kinder.
Yeah, and I think to myself afterwards, okay, well, I did have it. Why haven't I still got it?
Yeah, but for me personally, that's wrong. As a filmmaker,
but what I'm saying is that at the time, after I've watched, I mean, sometimes I can watch something and after it not have a Scooby-Doo, what I've just seen. But there are some of these stories where I watch them, I process them, and say a day or two later, sometimes I'm still thinking about them, and I know not just what I personally have taken from them, but I do understand them. And then a couple of months passes by, and you get into a pub chat, kind of as we are now, where we're sort of throwing ideas around, and somebody puts you on the spot and says, "Okay, then, smartass, explain Ghostlight." And I go, "Well, it's kind of like," and you think, "Well, okay, well." But your powers of communication, Simon, somehow they depending on what kind of day it is, what frame of mind you're in, they sometimes elude me. And I think, well, okay, is that my fault or is it the writer's fault?
The writer's fault.
Or does it not even matter if I've enjoyed getting there?
Ian is right. It is the writer's fault.
I disagree.
But it depends on what the writer intended to do. And the way I look at it is that something can be enjoyable without it being easy.
No, I totally agree with you.
Well, what is? I don't understand what the problem is.
No, for me, the problem is that if I was showrunner or if I was a writer and stuff like that, I would need the thing to make sense. You know,
the thing is, what you're doing, of course, when you make something like Ghost, like Warriors Gate, Kinder, that is impenetrable. Stephen Moffat is the absolute king of this, of making impenetrable storylines. Now, what you're doing, of course, is you are playing with fire. Because eventually public patience will run out and they will stop watching. Warriors Gate at 4 episodes was probably just about as much as the audience could cope with. Ghost like the same with 3 episodes. So you're definitely playing with fire. So what I'm saying is I think there is value in things that don't make sense as long as they've got some other reason, such as Charlotte says, characterization maybe, or it might be visual aesthetics that, such as Warriors Gate, that sell it to an audience. So you can make something that doesn't make sense. It's got some other quality to it that an audience will enjoy.
I hear you. I definitely hear you. But
you've got to be careful what you're doing. You've got to be careful.
But as I said, you know, I don't like. There are some stories that Moffat has written. I think it's great, it's brilliant. But I hate when he drops you into something that we're supposed to know what happened before. And I'm just like, what's going on? Especially what he did with Sherlock. To this day, they never explain how Sherlock survived when he jumped off the roof. They're all kinds of stupid things.
But that's just lazy writing.
And that to me, yes, that to me is lazy.
Hang on a minute. Can I come in on that? It's not actually rocket science. I get this about. I'm going to just go off on a tangent here about Sherlock. Knock it off. Go and read the Arthur Conan Doyles. That's where they've got their material from. The roof that you're talking about is the Reichenbach Falls. If you want to know how it is resolved, go and read Sherlock Holmes with the much superior Arthur Conan Doyle.
Because I'm supposed to have the answer in the show.
Yeah.
I don't have to go off and read the book.
What I'm saying though is they bastardized the original Conan Doyle story. It wasn't original stuff here. They just modernized what he had written.
But the other thing I think the difference here is that is now highlighted. We're now sort of teasing out, as it were, is there's a difference between somebody like Christopher Bailey, who writes Kinder deliberately to be obscure and difficult to understand, and then there's lazy writing.
Yeah,
I don't think Chris Bailey did it deliberately. I think it's what he was interested in. He was very interested in psychology and the matters of the mind. Now, bearing in mind when it was transmitted, we had a brand new Doctor. The show was aiming at a new audience of midweek or 7 o'clock, 7:30, whenever it was going to be on. That was there, and it worked. The other thing you've got to put into context as well is never ever assume that your audience isn't going to understand what you put out there, especially the great British public, because you can't tell what's going on with them. But also, when you've got a series that ran for as long as Doctor Who did, with 7 stories per season, you've got different stories for different flavors. So when you're looking at Kinder, when you get to Kinder, you've had Castrovalva, you've had Thor to Doomsday, bang, Kinder, something completely different. But a few weeks later, you're in Black Orchid.
Yeah,
something completely different. Then you've got Earthshock coming.
Anybody could understand Black Orchid.
And exactly, because it was fun. So, it is variety.
I'm not disagreeing with you guys at all. Believe it or not, I'm not disagreeing with you guys. But you're talking to the fella that didn't like 2001, didn't like Citizen Kane, did not like The Big Blue. Because for me, those things were too arty and it was too out there. And when, as an audience member, I should really be enjoying that stuff. I enjoyed the visual effects in 2001. I enjoyed Howl bit in 2001. The rest is just a big waste of time for me. All of it, that bit is a waste of time. But that's me, right? That's just me.
But then again, you like stuff like the Marvel things. I'm not particularly fond of it because I think it's all nonsense. Why did they kill off all the characters in that show? Where all the main characters? Why are they bringing out all this tosh that nobody's heard of? Who are all these other? Who's this Shangli or whoever he is? Piss off.
We've got a comment here from Digby Strawbridge watching in the chat. It's an important balance between intriguing and confounding the audience.
Yeah, but it has to make sense.
And Vanessa
like
Law
if you go to the pub like Dan and go, what was Kinder about?
I can tell you what Kinder was about.
If you're like that, then what's
Vanessa
the
Law says, what a lively conversation. I love it.
Always going to have lively conversations.
Like I was going to say, I think the difference is obviously in classic, it was like a one-shot story, wasn't it? It was like, that's your story for these weeks or week. Whereas when Moffat was doing his arcs, the problem was because of the way Doctor Who was set up then, it had to basically all link to a point and then have a big reveal.
No,
and that's
it didn't.
It always sort of
it didn't. He was the showrunner. He could have changed that format. He could have done anything with the show. He could have said, "I want it to be half-hour episodes now, and I'm going to have it in a series of 4." But he didn't. He followed the American pattern, which is okay at the time. It's now not necessarily at the time because time's moved and viewing habits are changing and it's all different again and people want something different in our country. But he had that choice. And then he had these overarching failed ideas in his head that all this was going to link up. And then, of course, we had the Lost season, which screwed up that. And then Matt decided quite rightly to go when he did. You've got to be careful of those big things. But that's the showrunner's responsibility. He didn't have to do any of that, Charlotte. No.
I know, but that's the difference. Here, though. So that's why he fell down.
Speaking about Stephen Moffat in particular here, I think that for when I've spoken to people, to normies about this, they tend to point in the direction of Series 6 of New Doctor Who at a point that they found particularly challenging. Yeah. And it was the time where we were right in the very, very depths of the arc of River Song. Who is River Song? Why should we care? We've got the whole situation where the Doctor, we've seen him die at the beginning of the season, and then we're supposed to watch through the entire thing, and with a big gap of months in the middle as well to get there. And I think that really confounded the audience, and that pushed them perhaps a little too far than many were prepared for on a Saturday tea time, and in a way which I think that's kind of stretched their loyalties a little.
Absolutely.
The fondness for the show and the way that they responded to Matt Smith, in particular in that title role, did kind of pull them through. Steve, I've got a quote here from Stephen Moffat. And he talked about this extensively a few times because he believed. Now, where have I put that? He believed that that the general public. Where have I put that? He believed that the general public. There was this idea out there that the general public didn't actually watch the show, that they had it on in the background and didn't pay attention to it. And this is something, because I think this is something that we've all heard. I just switch my brain off. And I think that's an expression that people kind of trot out when they just let something kind of carry them away. I don't think it means that people don't watch it. And Stephen Moffat believed that too. But he said that of his own scripts, he'd been brought to task a little over Let's Kill Hitler in particular, right in the middle of all those things that were all going on. And Let's Kill Hitler is all over the place. But he always says that of all of his scripts, that Day of the Doctor is the one that was the most complicated. And he says, I feel that I'm entitled to say this because I wrote it. In what order does any of that happen? Where do you start? Do you start with the 11th Doctor? Or do you start with the War Doctor? Do you start with Paul McGann's Doctor? What happens next to who in what order? And yet that's Doctor Who at its most accessible and most multiplex. This was Doctor Who as Doctor Who for anyone, even if you hadn't seen it before or for a long time, and yet it's the most complicated script I've ever written. That's what he said. So you can, and he's not wrong in that, is he? So it's a balance. I think what he's pointing to is a balance of script and production values, and the characters.
I'm with JT here.
Doing things, and the characters doing things and saying things that speak to us on whatever level, even if it's the most superficial level. If we're enjoying it, and we leave all smiles anyway. And isn't that what matters?
No.
It is what matters. If he has said that in regard to the Day of the Doctor, I'm going to say, well, it was your own bloody fault. You didn't need to make it that complicated. You had 2 doctors that had signed up to do it. All you had to do was bring the 2 doctors in and the Daleks, and the public and the fans would have been very happy to have that. You didn't necessarily have to go off on this whole, here's a brand new incarnation, which has since affected the show coming into the modern day. You didn't have to go into all this whole thing about acknowledging the time war, resetting it, blah blah. I mean, that was sheer fan wank.
Obviously, that's just one example, though. I think.
But most of his series was like that.
But the balance that he's talking about, though, is kind of universally applicable, and I think Russell had done that too, to a lesser extent. But I think what Russell did, arguably better than Stephen, was to realise that it was just as powerful and just as complex and just as searching and required just as much reflection from an audience, from any of us or any of you, if things were emotionally complex as much as narratively.
I think I'm with JT here. He made it too complicated. He dug himself a hole and he couldn't get out. And so I've spoken about this before. I'll just mention it one more time. He should not have created the War Doctor. It should have been Paul McGann, and it should have went straight across. That's what I'm saying. I said I'll just mention it once, mate. I'm not going to mention it again. I think he's made it too complicated. Yeah.
No, but it was interesting because I watched Day of the Doctor. Was it 2 days ago? Because I was like trying to find a stream. I was doing my top 5. But actually watching it again because I hadn't watched it in years. It was a proper almost fresh viewing of it for me. I was actually impressed with it. I thought it actually wasn't too complicated to watch it. I thought
it's not complicated. It's not complicated.
And I like the fact that actually he did finally sort of put the Time War to bed. That thing that had been overhanging.
Do you think, though, Charlotte,
so long?
Do you think that Stephen Moffat more kind of meant that it was more complicated for him to write and for him to make for him to sell a story like that's got all those levels, and it probably does have more levels than even Let's Kill Hitler. It required more effort on his part to pitch that story to us and make it sit with us. He's so confusing the roles.
It probably was, but I think he was for Moffat. Actually, like I said, I watched it again and I thought you're actually not egging it too much for once. He had a core theme in Day of the Doctor, which was the Time War and the effect that had on other generations afterwards. And I like the fact that the Doctor actually had a frank conversation about the Time War, because I felt like that never really happened. We'd had little moments and little comments, but for him to actually face himself and just go you've just forgotten it. That's why I really like that moment with Tennant and Smith when they are.
But why did he forget it?
It's probably a bad example that mentioned that story in particular, because obviously that had a way bigger job to do, and all that lore is kind of a different question. But I think we're looking at the mechanics of a script, and I think that the more any story has to ask of its audience, and the more plates it has spinning, the harder the duty of the writer, if they're good and if they're aware of their responsibility towards the viewer in the way that Ian was saying, then the writer needs to be the one who puts more effort in, not necessarily the viewer. I think
this is the beauty, I think. Sorry, Dan. This is the beauty of how Doctor Who can be, and why it should return to a 30-minute format and several stories in a series, because then you have that variety. Because have a look at season 26. Remembrance of the Daleks is gung-ho. Bang, 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 bang. You don't need to think, right? You know what it is. There's a Dalek. It's going to kill you. You've got to fight back. The Curse of Fenric is something completely different. The Greatest Show of the Galaxy, that was 25. Curse of Fenric, Battlefield, all these. I mean, the whole Sylvester McCoy, if you put them all together they're all different. And then you've got Ghostlight, which is something completely different. I find it very easy to understand and follow Ghostlight. I don't know what the big fuss has been about for all these years. But, it's...
Show off!
Look, but it is. I mean, the story is basically, Ghostlight is, you've got a cataloguer. And this guy has been going around cataloguing life, and he's been writing it down in his little index in his little library, and then it goes and changes on him. And what does he do? He goes, Argh! And the easiest way for him not to have to go through his entire universal catalogue is to destroy life. There you go, nutshell.
And that's And that, JT, is what I'm talking about with the internal logic. And I saw Java being said the same thing in the chat earlier on. As long as the story's got internal logic, don't try and connect it to the outside world. It's science fiction, it's fantasies, whatever it is. It won't connect. It won't make sense if you try and rationalize it with the outside world. But as long as it makes internal logic, which Ghostlight does, which Kinder does, which Warrior's Gate does, which 2001: A Space Odyssey does, it's fine. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean that's the brilliant thing about it. Also, bear in mind as well, as you get older and you revisit these things. So, for example, Warrior's Gate, I was 10, coming up to 11 at that very special time when we knew Tom was going as well. I watched Warrior's Gate at that age, thinking, don't quite get this, but loved it anyway. To go back to our point of it, I loved it. I was absolutely distraught when Romana and K9 leave at the end, even though I knew it was coming. And I loved the blandness of it, and I just thought this is different. But I watch it now, at my sensitive age now, and I get it. I get what Steve Gallagher was trying to do. I understand the backstage hassles that they have. So there's certain artistic things I will allow for that. I understand when Graham's come in. I get the story though, and I understand that this was the gateway between universes, which I didn't quite grasp between the E-space and the N-space thing when I was 10. But now I get that, and that's why the Void is the Void. This is the Tharals coming in as time sensitives. I know now that Romana's going to deal with them, very topical stuff today of what she's going to do, and it's just brilliant. And I love that story now. So you've got age that will come into all this as well. And one thing that Doctor Who between 1963 to 1989 has done is actually aged brilliantly. I do not think the modern series will age properly.
Yeah, I think
we have
will.
a wonderful
I'm not sure.
We have a wonderful comment here from Java being in the chat who says, a normie once told me Doctor Who was not supposed to make sense.
Wonderful.
That's the point of it.
Entertainment and escapism. Good for that, not we. I love that. I prefer to call them not we's, Java Bean.
I think that's a good
I think that gives, if you want to look at it that way, it gives permission for people to just write nonsense.
Well, not really, no, because you show me.
Silly.
How can you tell me, from a public's point of view, a Dalek makes sense? Or a Cyberman?
Well, we're stuck with the Cybermen and the Daleks, aren't
we? Let's just clarify though. I don't think that is an ideal. I don't think that is the intended goal. I think it's just how some will receive it, and that's not what a writer should have on their list of priorities.
Exactly.
But it's probably an inevitability of the way in which some of us,
some of
us will process it.
That's fine. People are still getting something out of it. He was enjoying it. That not we there. He enjoyed it. He was aware of it. Good for him or her.
I think back to the time I went to the cinema to see a Spider-Man film about 8 years ago. It was The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and I left the cinema, and I was there with a couple of my sons, and at the same time also leaving were two little old ladies, literally little old ladies, like you see a cartoon little old ladies.
Aunt Mays.
They'd been to see the same film, and we'd really enjoyed that movie, and these two old ladies, they had big smiles on their faces, and I overheard them say to one another, "Oh, that was fantastic. I loved every minute of that." I had no idea what was going on, though. Let's go and catch the bus will be here in a few minutes. Let's go and grab an ice cream.
Well, the thing is, they went to see the nice boy in Lycra, didn't they? Way, good for you, girls.
Bless their hearts. Obviously, that's a fantastic debate. I think you don't get this on Radio Free Skaro, do you? This is a fantastic debate. We're never going to arrive at any conclusions here. Of course we're not. But please drop us a comment. Let us know what you think, or what's the point? What the norm is in your life. Think of this question. Do they need to understand Doctor Who? Let us know in the comment section. And while you're there, like the video if you haven't already.
Subscribe
to the channel. And hit the little cloister bell so you get the notifications about when we're going live next. Charlotte, thanks for joining us. I know you've
tea time.
Hi, Charlotte. You've got a dip on us, everybody. Lovely to see you as always.
He's gone.
There she is. She's off. She's off.
And then there were four.
Fantastic. Yeah. And then there were four. Okay, now we're heading up to our Type 40 ad break, everybody. A little later than usual. We have got an ad break coming up. But I just wanted to talk about this because we had a comment come from Phil Hayes. Now, in case you weren't here last time on the show, Phil Hayes was the guy who, the lucky winner of our competition from Candy Jar Books to win a copy of Clack, the Doctor Who art of Chris Akalaos, wasn't he, Simon? And he's a very happy camper, isn't he? Because his copy of Clack has indeed turned up, hasn't it?
It indeed has. He's absolutely delighted with the copy. This proves that we do send out our competition prizes, and it's Sean Russell that's sent this out from Candy Jar. And Phil is delighted because not only has he got a copy of Clack, Sean has sent him 3 other books as well, Lethbridge Stewart and Wilson books, which is really, really nice. So thank you, Sean. You are a star. Thank you for that.
To do, Sean.
Wow. And there are the photos with Phil Hayes' very, very impressive TARDIS that lives in his front room and leads through into his office in the back room. It's fantastic, his TARDIS.
Yeah, you can go off people, Phil. It's absolutely wonderful. But congratulations, Phil. Thank you, Sean. Everybody at Candy Jar Books. There'll be another competition coming up eventually.
Yeah, there will.
On Type 40 when we come back after our little move around. More on that in a little moment. But yes, it is time for the Type 40 ad break, our T or P break. Time for you to squirt out or take in whatever you need to.
Out.
While we and everybody else. It does, doesn't it? I don't know where I get this.
Moving on.
Well, everybody else enjoys the Type 40 ad break. So here it is. Check these out.
These are some of the world's most advanced televisions. This set has a quick start picture. Here, full remote control. A 26-inch model with a high brightness screen. And finally, one that even has its own audio output. But all these sets have two things in common. Tomorrow's technology and the Philips name.
Philips, simply years ahead.
Yeah, Rover 600 automatic. Nightfire red. 14 months old. Leather seats, beige to match the interior. Yes, we've got one. Has it got the walnut dash?
At Rover dealers, we believe you should have the same choice of used cars as new ones, which is why every dealer has access to thousands of quality-checked used Rovers.
Yeah, what's this about you writing off CJ's Rover?
Including just the one you need.
Buy a Hornby train set for the boy. It's amazing the fun you can have building it up. He really loves it.
Hornby Railways, the present with a future.
I did hear, Gareth, that Nescafe is an original.
And absolutely exclusive.
It certainly is. Absolutely exclusive. Yes. A special blend and roast that gives you the richer, smoother Nescafe taste. Absolutely exclusive, Peter. In this one jar.
And nowhere else.
Just in this jar, eh? What a shame they only made the one.
Absolutely exclusive. Because Nescafe don't make coffee for anyone else.
Oh, Eunice Stubbs. God bless her.
Yeah.
It's absolutely... You can't imagine. She was never in either version of Doctor Who.
Incredible.
How did we miss her? I mean, just how did we miss her?
She was always I found Sherlock, going back to Sherlock for a second, I found Sherlock completely unwatchable. I hated it. But Eunice Stubbs, it was utterly, utterly sublime. She was by far and away the best thing about Sherlock. She was also the best thing about Wurzel Gummidge. Much as I love John Pertwee and Wurzel Gummidge, Aunt Sally is literally priceless.
She was just good at her job, though, wasn't she? Everything she did with full commitment and understanding. She was an incredible talent.
And you can't help thinking that if you were going to cast a woman as the Doctor, you'd go for somebody like Eunice Stubbs, wouldn't you? She, as much as I'm against a female Doctor, she would have been brilliant as the Doctor. She's one in a million. I love Eunice Stubbs. Worship her. Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Well,
and Gareth Hunt, of course, bless him, no longer with us either. Only one with us in that last advert.
Yep.
So, yes, I've deliberately put that on because, we lost Eunice Stubbs a few days ago, everybody, as you've just said. So this is... I don't really know how to describe Eunice Stubbs. Describing her as a character actress doesn't seem
there is a word
cover it. Describing her as a performer, it just seems too vague. So Eunice Stubbs, born in 1937 and passed away last week in Edinburgh. She never appeared, inexplicably, on Doctor Who in TV. She was in a Paul McGann story back in 2007 on audio called The Horror of Glamrock by Paul Mars, which received its premiere on BBC Radio 7. So at least she's in there somewhere. But I think Doctor Who fans, I think we're all really fond of Eunice Stubbs for a number of reasons. And it's that close association with somebody really, really dear to our hearts in John Pertwee. They starred opposite one another in Wurzel Gummidge for the best part of a decade, between Wurzel Gummidge itself, which debuted in 1979, and then into Wurzel Gummidge Down Under. I can't imagine there's too many people, particularly over the age of, say, 30, who haven't seen this somewhere, even if it's just in repeats. So they were extraordinary together. And for a time, I think that if there's any role that John had that eclipsed the role of the Doctor, it was as Wurzel Gummidge.
Oh, yeah.
And Eunice Stubbs herself, too, managed to just disappear into this role and connect with this character. And in a really, this was not a likable character that she played.
No, she's
and
not.
Yet we loved her to bits in Wurzel Gummidge. And the chemistry between them was just outstanding. So much so that it's impossible to imagine. You know, they are making new Wurzel Gummidge shows now. A wonderful series on the BBC. But I think more than Wurzel himself, it's even more unimaginable that somebody else could play the role of Aunt Sally. How she wasn't in Doctor Who on TV,
no idea.
I just don't know.
I'm sure Nathan Turner tried. I'm sure there was a story where he tried to get, because he knew Una, and I know. But the thing is, Una was always busy. She was a very professional, always working actor. You know, people always knew she was going to be reliable. I mean, we grew up with her for all sorts of things, but she's incredibly famous for Give Us a Clue. She was one of the team captains for years on that show, which tied in with everything else. So she always seemed to be around when we were all kids. Remember?
So many shows of all different kinds. There was drama, there was comedy, there was game shows. We knew not just the characters that she played, but we felt like we knew Eunice Stubbs too. I mean, on screen at the moment, we're looking at, as you just described, Give Us a Clue, where she was on Give Us a Clue for many, many years with Michael Aspel, Lionel Blair, numerous other people that either hosted that or were other team captains, regular combatants in that game show. There was Till Death Us Do Part, where she played Rita, Alf Garnett's long-suffering daughter. She played that part again, off and on for 20 years into the sequel show too. She was unrecognisable in Fawlty Towers. They're just the one episode. She was a kind of straight woman to multiple comedy actors, people like Anthony Newley, Dick Emery, Roy Hood, all these others, and linked to Cliff Richard too, not just appearing in his BBC One show in the 70s for I think 3 or 4 years as his kind of sidekick. But again, that seems Una was nobody's sidekick really, but there she was on Cliff's show and as one of the co-stars in a seminal British film, Summer Holiday. There, we're looking at that on screen too. Summer Holiday is unimaginable without Eunice Stubbs. And these shows, movies, they formed part of the backgrounds to our childhoods in a similar way that Doctor Who did. And I don't know which is a favourite. All different shades of Eunice Stubbs. I'd say she hadn't had an acting credit for a few years. You know, she'd obviously well into her 80s now. I think most people, younger people, will know her from Sherlock, where she played Mrs. Hudson across all seasons of that show. International hit show Sherlock, which I personally love for the most part, Simon. And she was brilliant in it. You know, she added a much needed sense of truth, I think, to a show that was, it was very Moffat, wasn't it? It was very, very stylish. But she brought what she always brought at this point, well into her 70s. And she felt like television royalty, I think wherever she appeared.
She was one of those people that basically, as soon as she appeared on the screen, she lit up the screen. And there aren't actually that many actors, when you think about it, that can do that. But she literally lit up the screen. And Sherlock, I think, is the absolute prime example of that, because it was quite a dark series. And she brought that. She literally lit up the screen every time. She's also unique. I can't think of another performer like Eunice Stubbs. Genuinely, there's nobody else out there, and she was just so watchable. That sounds a silly thing to say, but there are a lot of actors who actually aren't very watchable, and yet Eunice Stubbs, she's one of those people you could watch reading the telephone directory, and you'd enjoy watching her doing it. Yeah. And again, there's not many actors can get away with that.
Well, your point is in the advert there for the coffee, for Nescafe. Those Nescafe adverts went on for 20 years, believe it or not, in various formats.
They chose the people to go into those very carefully, didn't they, JT?
They did, and they always approached them, and they did it properly. And Eunice, she was in a couple of them, but in that one there, she's there with Peter and Gareth, and she's just nailing it. Yeah. And people felt a warmth emanating through. And somebody said there, I can't remember who it was. There is a word that describes it. Totally agree. I think it was Richard. icon is the word we have to describe for Una. And I was very touched the other day when looking through the Twitter, because I knew obviously she died in Edinburgh. I knew she'd had a family, but I was very touched that one of her sons took to Twitter to thank the literally millions of people. Yeah. And he said, we had no idea, because to them it was, of course, just their mum who happened to act and be on telly occasionally. And then suddenly, and that's when they suddenly realized, just how much these iconic people that were part of a special time of television, the golden age of television, which we grew up with, they meant to us. Yeah. I was very moved by the fact that the family hadn't quite realized that.
The thing is, though, with her, basically, she didn't have this one recurring role that everybody remembers her for.
Yes.
Everybody remembers her for being Eunice Stubbs, right?
Yeah.
That's the difference between her and other British actresses that went through the same path as her. She's will always be known as Eunice Stubbs, right? She wouldn't be known as, Sherlock Holmes's landlord or landlady or whatever. And she had a unique career path, which by acting,
she was huge in theatre.
Yes, I'm saying. So there you go. I mean, she did what she had to do in the world, and she left with people who loved her and had a huge fan base. So
and Matthew Pounder in the chat says it all, national treasure, and she absolutely
was. Yeah.
Well,
and it says something about where we are now as well, because we're losing more and more of them now, aren't we, guys? So we're at that age now where we're losing a lot of our national.
You do realize that picture that you just put up, Dan, I think most of them are dead.
Charlotte Coleman, John
Coleman, yeah.
Sadly,
I think even one of the kids there has passed on now as well. Don't quote me on that, by the way.
Charlotte Coleman died.
There you go.
Years ago now, 10 years ago. Yeah,
she was a very accomplished actress. Very much so.
Yes, I think it's obviously not everybody can find a role within Doctor Who, or that role find them. And it is weird how just because she was in another show entirely with one of the Doctors, we therefore associate her with our show. But I don't know. I just thought there was something really special about Eunice Stubbs that was worth acknowledging, specifically to Doctor Who fans. And maybe there's some little role that, if you believe in headcanon, then maybe you can cast one for yourself where Eunice Stubbs would have fitted really naturally into Doctor Who lore, whether it be as a villain or as a companion or as a Time Lord or whatever. I don't know. I think that the fact that she could disappear into all of these roles, as you said, Ian, and keep that attachment and affection from the British public means that she was one of a rare breed and an icon from a time where British entertainment seemed to balance being really homely and warm with at the same time being quite challenging too. And I obviously rest in peace, Eunice Stubbs. It seems strange to say that she'll be missed because the lady, as you would expect in later years, had taken fewer and fewer roles. But that's just how things are. But the fact is, that she felt like extended family, not just our sort of TV family, but the Doctor Who family. It means that she did it. Whatever she did it right. We've got lots of lovely comments in the chat. People saying hello, people who've got in late and find us talking about Eunice Stubbs, but lots of rest in peace, Una. National treasure from Matthew Pounder there. Problem being, says Una, is
absolutely
as strawberries and cream. Couldn't put it more beautifully myself. And wonderful actress. And Alex Storm watching the chat said Sherlock gave Una a renewed popularity. Just a small part, but she brought so much to it. That's the difference between a star and an actor, maybe, Jason.
May I give you a story, actually, that ties in with that quote there about Sherlock on behalf of my friend David. My friend David, he won't be watching, so I hope he doesn't mind. He's an actor. And he was doing rehearsals for a play somewhere a few years back, obviously. You'll be able to place the timing, I'm not sure. And he was having a break, and he was looking through a script, and he was having a coffee in the canteen, and he heard this voice saying, do you mind if I sit next to you because everywhere else is taken? And he looks up and it's Eunice Stubbs.
Wow.
And he said, of course, absolutely, absolutely come and sit down. And she spent an hour and 10 minutes or something like that talking to him about where he was, what his career plans were, the script he was working on. And he's always said, and he mentioned this the other day when it was announced she'd passed, he will treasure the personal advice that she gave him about being in the profession he was in from her perspective. And one of the pieces of advice she said to him was, never give up. And he was obviously chatting to her, this legend that was in front of him. He was very pleased to be speaking to her. And she said to him that she was actually thinking of retiring because the work was drying up. The offers were not coming in as much. And what was coming in, she wasn't really interested in doing. And that's perfectly fine for an actress of her caliber.
Yeah.
And the next thing, she's cast in Sherlock.
Brilliant.
Lovely.
Good for her.
So I hope David doesn't mind me giving that story away. I'm sure he won't, but he's taken that with him to this very day, and he remembers everything she told him. He won't reveal what she said because it's personal and quite right. But she was there for him, and I think that's lovely.
So she was obviously the same off screen as she was on, and that's always a relief when there is nice on screen and off screen.
She was pretty Sally, though, let's face it. So I hope she wasn't like that in real life. But,
real nasty piece of work. Yeah, they're great character. And yeah, it just takes more to sell the bad guys, doesn't it? Particularly the people that we love to hate. Rest in peace, Una. Thank you for everything.
God bless you, Una.
And thank you to you out there watching and commenting along here on Facebook and on YouTube on this show this afternoon. We've got some news for you while you're all still here.
Woo!
Tell you that, yes, times are a-changing. Times and spaces are a-changing here on Type 40 Live, because this is our last of these big live streams here for you on a Tuesday afternoon UK time. It's all changed from next week here at Type 40 Live. So what's happening, Dan? What's going on? What do you mean?
What's happening, Dan?
What do you mean?
What's going on?
Don't worry. We're moving. We're moving our slot and we're moving our day very deliberately. So, yeah, we're moving from Tuesday afternoons to Thursday evenings UK time at 8 p.m., everybody. Now, why are we doing this? I hear you cry.
Why are you doing this? Why are we doing this?
Thank you, Bob. Yes, it is Panto season coming up, everybody. Why are we doing
12
this?
o'clock and still no sign of Dick.
Okay. The reason why we're moving.
He's here all night.
The reason why we're moving day and time is simply because a few weeks ago, when we did a live stream on a Thursday night with that joyous news that Chris Chibnall, the world's worst showrunner, of course, and Jodie Whittaker were leaving, we had such a great number of people watching. It was clear that, yeah, it's a slightly sweeter spot for you, the viewers out there all over the world. So there's that, but there's also simply the fact that lockdown in the UK has lifted, and the real world, the working world, has started to turn a little quicker for all of us. So some of us, more often than not, can't be here, can't make it, or whatever, have to dip out. So yeah, rather than kind of dilute the chemistry, which we know that you love as much as we do, we thought we'd rather step it up, change things up, and move to a prime time slot. Type 40 Live in prime time, everybody. From next week, it's the same place on the space.
We're going to beat EastEnders. Woo!
Strangely, we do stand a chance of beating EastEnders here.
We do, yes.
We hope you're going to join us in this new slot. We appreciate there may be some people who they can't make it, but we do know from the messages that we've got in the chat and generally out there that some of you also have found it a struggle on a Tuesday afternoon too, as you've returned to work, depending on what you're doing. We are going to find out. We are going to be publicising this over the next week or so, all over social media, just sort of repeating it so that people out there, people who are regular viewers, don't forget, but also to try and reach out to more people wherever you are in the world. So that'll be out there with all the different time zones, wherever you are on whatever side of America or indeed Australia. We've just had Java being asking the chat, Australia time. We don't know. I'll get that to you as soon as I can. That'll be in the information too. And
is it tomorrow in Australia?
Yeah.
Or was it yesterday?
I think it is.
Because we're time traveling with Australia, aren't we?
The talents of Wayne Chiang's chipped in. The other drivers on my commute will thank you for this, Dan, and a few laughing faces. So yes, Vanessa Law adds that's noon Pacific time and 3 p.m. Eastern. So that's late to mid-afternoon, depending on who you are. We've got a few from the talents of Wayne Chiang. And yes, this works much better for me from Daniel Edwards. And
that's good to hear. Make sure you're sharing the news and getting people to subscribe and ringing the bell, ring that close to bell, so that we all get to remember next week, including us, because we're going to have to remember. It's next Thursday, live at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, and also, we're at a point in the UK to where our time zones, our time zones, our clock is going to start changing soon. Yeah. So,
oh no, not again.
Yeah. Yes, it's nearly Christmas, Simon. We're nearly there again.
It'll be time to put the clocks back here in a few weeks' time. So we felt like cozier evening live stream, maybe a hot drink or two on the go. As summer, that was a couple of weeks ago. I think
that's been and gone.
You can still have cornettos though, Ian. It's fine.
Oh no, you know. Hey.
See, this is it. We're delegating, everybody. We're delegating and giving our own chat. We're giving them the ability to do some of the work for us. This will be 5 a.m. in Australia. Is that slightly better for you, Java Bean?
Sounds worse.
God Almighty!
You can play it back. It's fine. Oh God.
Yeah.
No, it must be what time in Australia at the moment? It must be about 1 o'clock in the morning or something, isn't it?
Just
I have no idea.
Megan Eurobyte's asking, are you starting this week or next week? No, this is next week. Next week. Richard Brooks says, a good idea. I had to miss last week for work. I will be there next Thursday, 8 p.m. And so generally, we have put the feelers out with a few people to test the waters and see how this would fly with some of our regulars. So the general feeling is, it's a thumbs up.
Start your weekend with us, Spacebookers, on a Thursday night, Friday Eve. Start it here with us live at 8 every week from next Thursday onwards, and we are going to take you through the abomination that's coming up. We'll all be nice and cozy. It's going to be brilliant.
In fact, I only know one person that disagrees with that time slot. That's Chris Chibnall. He really doesn't agree with us moving at all. So there you go. There you go.
He's never happy, though, are you?
He's never happy. No,
it takes a lot to cheer up Chris Chibnall. Maybe, so don't miss that. Yes, next week at 8 p.m. on a Thursday night here on Type 40 Live. We're not giving up the Tuesday slot completely. There will be something next Tuesday afternoon just for you. Because we love you so
much. It's JT. He's going to be on his own. On his own.
We're going to depart, as always, with some pretty pictures for you, everybody.
Woo!
Specifically Daleks. So this image, this one in particular, I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with the TV-21 Dalek.
Oh, yes.
So, as seen in the 1960s comics, TV-21, all those wonderful strips, the Daleks always looked slightly different from how they looked on screen, didn't they, Simon?
Yeah. They were, well, let's be honest, they were kind of blinged Daleks, weren't they? They were pimp my Dalek, basically. They looked fabulous. I love the ones in TV-21. As you can see there, they're a bit more robust, a bit more chunky, and a bit more scary. I always thought they were a little bit more intimidating. They look a darn sight more robust than their TV counterparts. Yeah. Love them. And the colours, it's the colours.
And there are numerous reasons for this. I mean, it's not just that they couldn't be bothered. It's the fact that the pictures were going quite small, weren't they? And even though they were painted larger, people like Ron Turner painted them larger than we got them in comics, or than 60s kids got them in comics. But they were still, they had to go in quite detailed. It was close-up work, wasn't it? There's a lot of detail in the average Dalek.
And it was great because they could do low-angle shots, as you've got a couple of them there, which they couldn't do on the TV. You didn't get Daleks at low angles, and Daleks look great at low-angle shots, like Destiny of the Daleks proves. So in TV-21, when they did so many low-angle shots and high-angle shots, actually looking down on the Daleks, they look so much more cinematic than they ever did in the TV show. Love them.
Yeah. So why are we staring at this? You may be asking.
Why are we staring at this, Dan?
Well, it's because our favourite Dalek artist, the Prydonian, has been back to this model of Dalek and decided to tinker with them a little. So first of all, he gave us this study. As character designers, people out there who work in the creative arts, you'll know, as character designers, this is what you do. You put together how the design will look all the way around from lots and lots of different angles. So yeah, that sort of boils it down to its constituent parts. We get to see all those details that you were just talking about there, Simon, up close, and that's the character study. But of course, this being the Prydonian, he didn't stop there either. He put them in situ as well. We get to see these Daleks in all their glory. Here, check this out. Hold on, check this out. There we are.
Ooh.
This piece is the Daleks' control room, so it's a little bit dark.
Is it really cold in there? That's what I have to go around the fire and get warm. That's what they're doing.
It has
getting darker and colder for them too, Jay.
When I saw this the other day, I thought this has echoes of the Dalek movie with Peter Cushing.
It does.
Yeah.
Isn't it gorgeous?
The colours, yeah.
The colours are great. I love the slats and the guns on the same TV-21 Daleks always look way better, and the guns that he's rendered them here are phenomenal. I love those guns. Those are mean guns. They mean business. Those do.
They do. I think it's the chunkiness of them and the skirts as well. I love they're slightly more squared off.
Yeah, which is correct to the TV-21. That's how they were.
It's just beautiful stuff. Yeah. And I've noticed, I don't know if he's just got a little bit bored with doing standard Daleks, but he keeps looking at some of these more obscure examples of Doctor Who history and kind of making these feel just as real.
Honestly, it's fantastic art, isn't it? I mean, the 3D, the reflections and everything right across the board. He does some really great work, and God bless him for doing this stuff, because I enjoy every time you put a picture up. I enjoy them immensely.
They
really are cool. Yeah. Really cool.
What's he going to do next? Because it does seem to be something every few days. I mean, this was up a few days ago, wasn't it, JT? He's got more stuff up all the time. So all I can just say is image credit there at the bottom. James Johnson on Twitter. Go and check it out. We'll be looking at more of his work, no doubt, in further live streams. But I couldn't leave this one hanging. It's the warmth of it, Simon.
And Digby Strawbridge, I can see in the chat, is saying, is this a film version of The Chase? Yeah, it does look like a film version of The Chase, doesn't it?
I love that. Wouldn't that have been brilliant?
Wouldn't that? And that, of course, would have been the third film that they would have made.
Trilogy.
Yeah, but it wouldn't have looked as good as this, I tell you that much. But it's a good
I would have
point.
loved that.
Yes.
We must do that review of the films at some point, guys.
Got to do that.
Yeah, and it's never too late to give us that third movie. Somebody out there, give us a movie of The Chase, please.
They still hold the rights, probably. They still hold the rights at some point, unless they've lapsed.
I'd hate to think who owns them now, though, with all the years that it's been swapped and moved on. It's probably some huge, big conglomerate now, forgotten about it.
In China.
Yeah, probably.
Don't bring up China. Don't bring up China.
Nobody mentioned China.
Nobody mentioned China.
I got away with it.
It's like the war, isn't it? Nobody mentioned the war. Nobody mentioned China.
We'd have to do a whole other show. Yeah, that's going down quite well. Nice one, Digby. A great idea, says Richard Brooks, watching in the chat. Maybe just an animated version. An animated feature-length Doctor Who. I'd go for that, to be truthful.
As long as it's done by different people that do the Blu-rays and DVDs now. Because they're awful. Have you seen them? I'm just looking forward to the first Hartnell animation, which is coming up. We've got Galaxy 4 and the Daleks Master Plan being planned, I hear. I'm really looking forward to seeing how they're going to look. I just hope it's a different crew and not the lazy ones that are doing them currently. Oh, have you seen it? Oh, please.
Yeah.
Oh, please. Oh.
We'll
come back to that in another show.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, because mine popped through the post yesterday. We've got this beautiful picture as well. This is somewhere. This is somewhere in the States.
Happy Halloween.
Sadly, I don't know where this is. So if this is in your town, I'd love to know. Apparently, this is a book barn, everybody.
So fabulous. Yeah.
A miniature library, aren't they, JT?
Yeah, in our country, we tend to get them with the old red phone boxes around the country. There is I think it was somewhere near Edinburgh where there is one of the older police boxes in the Edinburgh style, which are thinner versions. That's been converted into one. But it's great. You go along and you put your book in, you swap it and all this. It's a nice community thing. That actually reminds me of some of the old British Sunday afternoon fetes you would go to, where there was always inevitably a homemade police box, at these British garden fetes and stuff, and or an exhibition of sort. And that reminds me of that. I think that's sweet. Nicely done as well. Look at that sky.
I'm expecting the guy from Halloween to come round the corner with a knife. It is, isn't it? Yeah.
It does look like Haddonfield from the Halloween film.
Yeah.
It does.
I still can't get over the fact that every time I see a police box in these American or abroad, I still, after all these years, I still can't get over it. It's just weird, it just doesn't compute still. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is. I remember I was talking to an American friend of mine when he was talking about an episode of Columbo. When Columbo came to London, he thought that was weird as well. So it's just like us, and when we see a police box in, suburban America, we think it looks a bit weird. So there you go.
It's like when Friends came over to London, which was just to cash in on the popularity here. They used to do that occasionally, didn't they? They'd swap countries and stories and so. It was always rubbish. It was always terrible. But
that is true. Yeah, absolutely true.
That's a lovely picture, though.
It is.
Yes, I thought so too. And an ideal place with which to leave you on a Tuesday afternoon. So, yes, this is the final full Type 40 live stream.
The end of Tuesday.
At least for now. It's a bit of an end of an era. So there's people asking, when is this changing? When is it happening? I'm confused already. Don't be confused, everybody. It's really simple. It's really simple. It's next Thursday here on the Spacebook. Type 40 Live goes prime time. Don't miss it. There'll be numerous reminders if you keep an eye on our social media
and hit the bell
and Twitter at Type 40 Doctor Who.
It's like being on BBC Two, but back on BBC One. We're going to be on BBC One on Thursdays.
We're going to be beating BBC One and BBC Two. It's so obvious. It's easy to do nowadays.
Yeah.
We have people love that TARDIS better set design than the current.
Let's hoping Jodie doesn't come out of it.
And Alan Collins says, many thanks for giving your time to us in this.
Thank you, Alan.
Thanks to you guys in the chat.
Alan, thank you. Yeah, thank you for being here. Thanks for sharing all this with us. Ta-ra, everybody. I just Googled it, said Kelly. There's a
Detroit
library in Detroit. So
wow.
Detroit. Maybe. I don't know.
And Detroit's a music capital, and there's a police box there. How freaky is this? This is really bizarre.
That's where Axel Foley lives, isn't it? Detroit. There you go.
Is it really? Learn something new every day. Yes, we've got Beverly Hills Doctor Who barn by the looks of it. If you'd like some more of all this kind of talk, basically, because we're going to be away a little bit longer, another couple of days, and you're going to miss us, then you can always check back with some of our earlier conversations, other live streams, other arguments.
And all the things we got right in them, going right back to last summer. You can see us predicting things that have come true.
Over again on in Type 40 Live Seasons 1 and 2 and earlier shows in Seasons 3 as well. All those other live streams, hours and hours of it. Hit the playlists here on the Spacebook channel for more if you do miss us in the week and a bit while we're away. And there's the Type 40 podcast itself. You can find that at its home space, type40.podbean.com, or on Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, all those other places. There's our social media, as I was reminding you. Can't forget to remind you about that. Now,
finally got rid of
can I? It's nearly happening, everybody. Stick with us. We're going to be here blow by blow as this fella picks up the old P45. Good stuff. Yes, but that is it for this time. Thank you, everybody, so much for your time and all these comments in the chat.
Press the like button.
Yeah, please hit the like button if you haven't already. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. It's more important than ever that you hit that little bell, hit the cloister bell to get the notifications about where we'll be going live next.
Also, comments.
Type 40 Live, Thursdays, 8 p.m. Don't miss that. More Doctor Who programming. There's the podcasts and more coming to the channel soon, so stay tuned for all of that. Thanks, everyone, for stopping by. Great stream. Thanks, Vanessa.
Thanks,
Take care,
Vanessa.
everyone. Says probably best Doctor Who podcast. Says Java Bean.
Absolutely, Java Bean.
Absolutely. Will there be more video episodes of the podcast? I liked the Kyle one recently. Oh, they are, Kyle. Well, Kyle will be very pleased to hear that. We'll pass that along. Yes, we're going to keep making the video tracks whenever we can. It's not always possible. Not everybody we speak to wants to be on video, so we do have to respect that.
True.
But we'll try and bring you that whenever we can. Kelly says, so much fun as always. Bye all, says Dr. Blaze. Thanks for joining us, Doctor. Good to see you too. That is it for now. Let's go and get out here, everybody. Let's go and get out here. Yeah, thanks.
Bloody Charlotte beat us to it.
Everybody. Yeah, you're on dessert by now, aren't you, Charlotte?
Yeah, probably is.
Not after 8 by now.
Bye, Spacebookers. Bye. Live. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.